A pink-haired girl falls, realizing she was never loved. Lying dead, she wonders how her life ended this way. She recalls her name, Camille Oxalis, a duke's illegitimate daughter. Despised by servants and ignored by her father, Camille watched as he doted on her legitimate sister, Catalia. Praised for her magic, Catalia feigned pity for her frail sister. Catalia criticizes her sister's simple attire. She offers a beautiful yellow ribbon as a gift. Overjoyed, Camille gratefully accepts the present. Her father violently accuses her of theft, shattering her joy as she realizes her sister's betrayal. He reveals the ribbon was a loan as Catalia smiles, her red eyes gleaming with malice. Whack! A blade comes down as punishment. Believing she must endure it all, Camille sees her sister manipulating their family like puppets. An older Catalia excitedly looks forward to the royal ball. Anxious in the carriage, Camille worries about being late for the royals. Her father questions her dissatisfaction and she quickly backs down. Catalia encourages her sister to enjoy their family vacation. Catalia laughs, thoroughly enjoying the view. Cheering, Catalia runs off to explore the area. Her father shates her off the cliff's edge. He watches her fall, his expression grim. As she falls, her father's voice explains she was sacrificed for Catalia's marriage. Her father reveals his ambition. For Catalia to be queen, Camille's death was necessary. She plunges into the dark abyss. A final memory of a gift brings a painful realization before death. She realizes she was never loved, and her hopes were foolish. As her consciousness shatters, she accepts this is death. She welcomes an eternal sleep, free from suffering. A loving couple joyfully embraces their newborn child. The new father is overcome with joyful tears. He weeps with pure happiness. The beautiful baby is named Anemone. The father lifts baby Anemone, filled with gratitude. Wah! The crying baby despairs. Why was I born again? A lavish royal crib awaits its occupant. She remembers dying, expecting eternal rest. But the haunting memories of her family remain. Reborn as a baby, she can only cry in despair. A young boy notes sadly that the baby always cries. A maid scolds the young royal highness for barging in. The crown prince of Lycal dismisses her concerns. He proudly declares he is the baby's brother. Her father gently reminds him not to bother Cecilia too much. The young prince, Jean, tells his father how lovely he finds his sister, Anemone. She was reborn as Anemone Lycal Gentiana, princess of the kingdom of Lycal. The kingdom is protected by stalwart knights. The current king developed Lycal into a powerhouse of magic and technology. As a result, Lycal is now a respected world power. The royal parents watch over the sleeping Princess Anemone. Prince Jean urgently tugs on his father's coat for attention. The queen smiles, cautioning them not to wake the sleeping baby. The loving royal family poses for a portrait. Prince Jean reflects on his busy schedule. A memory surfaces of her past life's despair. Her father cruelly demands she endure being poisoned. He orders Camille to use magic to heal herself. As she suffers, her father calls her a disgusting disgrace. She tearfully apologizes, wondering why he poisoned her. Her sister, Catalia, feigns concern for her. Camille worries for her sister, then sees she is perfectly fine. Catalia sheds crocodile tears over her sister's suffering. Her father reveals the training was Catalia's idea. Betrayed, Camille looks up at her father and sister. Catalia asks to help her sister as her father agrees. A terrified Camille begs her smiling sister to stop. With no power to refuse, she endured their torment.
Catalia's false words of comfort mask her cruelty.
She knows nothing of family or love, only horror. Back in the present, Prince Jean greets his baby sister. He lovingly calls her a blessed and sweet child. Anemone inwardly rejects their kind words. Her brother promises he will always be brave for her. Her new father promises to love and protect her always. He gently kisses his dear Anemone's forehead. The king arrives with an armful of presents. He offers a beautiful rattle as a gift to Anemone. The queen lovingly kisses her daughter's forehead.
She holds her sleeping baby with a serene smile.
The queen stands with her child in a sunlit room. Her brother Jean greets the sleeping princess. Prince Jean beams with pure brotherly love.
The queen sits elegantly, holding the sleeping Anemone.
Jean and his father share a serious look. Prince Jean criticizes a portrait, saying they're cuter. He demands the court painters draw them more beautifully. The nervous painters sweat under the prince's gaze. Prince Jean bows, announcing he must continue his training. He studies diligently under his tutor's watch. He also trains in the magical arts and sciences. As crown prince, he lives a demanding life of duty. The injustice of her past life flashes before her eyes. The king worries that Anemone's long sleep is an illness. He panics, vowing to mobilize the entire country to cure her. A nightmare begins. Her father pushes her off a cliff. She sees her own dead body at the bottom. The king cries out his son's name in shock.
A disheveled Prince Jean appears, looking exhausted.
The royal family rushes to him, asking what happened. Jean just smiles happily while holding his sleeping sister.
He holds a large bouquet of beautiful flowers.
He presents the flowers with a brilliant smile.
Baby Anemone sleeps peacefully, nestled among flowers. Her brother Jean, holding a bouquet, resolves to give it to her himself.
The queen holds a suddenly awake baby Anemone.
The king and Jean gasp in surprise.
Anemone's eyes are wide open for the first time.
In the grand hall, maids prepare for a grand ceremony.
The princess is held tenderly in her mother's arms. An official addresses the king and Prince Jean. The queen smiles down at her baby, who looks back at her. The queen notes that while the country already recognizes Jean, she's surprised his ceremony coincides with Anemone's awakening. Jean quietly agrees. Prince Jean glances over his shoulder, a hint of concern on his face.
The queen laughs, tickling Anemone, who seems less than thrilled.
Jean turns away, his expression somber.
Wondering if she made him mad, the queen supposes Jean isn't okay as he faces the court. Anemone looks up, bathed in a gentle, magical light.
A vision appears of a divine blue-haired woman with a unicorn.
The royal family stands together in their formal attire.
A memory shows a younger Jean receiving a sacred text.
He is then presented with a ceremonial sword.
Finally, he receives a necklace with a brilliant blue stone.
A ring is placed on his finger, marking the crown prince's oath-taking ceremony.
Prince Jean stands tall, now officially the crown prince. The magnificent royal castle stands against a clear blue sky. The king tells Anemone she looks wonderful, and Jean agrees she's cute. Prince Jean stares down in awe at his sister. The king tells his wife about the fireworks and parade planned for the celebration. The queen delights in the news, while the king and Jean beam, excited to show off Anemone. Anemone fumes, thinking her birth is not just a bonus for her brother's ceremony. Her parents leave to greet their guests, entrusting Anemone to Jean's care. The grand hall is filled with nobles for the royal celebration.
Prince Jean holds his sister, smiling gently.
He correctly guesses she doesn't like noisy crowds, which she confirms with a grumpy look.
Jean carries his sister away from the main crowd. He proudly shows his baby sister to a group of ladies. He bows politely as the ladies admire the princess. Two noble ladies gush over how cute Anemone is. Jean gives his sister a playful wink. An elderly nobleman approaches, respectfully greeting the crown prince. Anemone's eyes widen in utter shock and horror. A terrifying memory flashes of being beaten as a child.
The traumatic memory of being pushed off a cliff returns.
The nobleman offers Prince Jean his sincere congratulations.
Anemone freezes as she recognizes the man, Duke Oxalis, her former father.
Jean acknowledges the Duke, noting the fame of the Oxalis family. Duke Oxalis stares, a look of disbelief on his face.
The Duke remarks that Princess Anemone is even cuter than the rumors say.
Anemone glares, realizing this is the man who killed her.
She thinks that her murderer doesn't even recognize her.
Duke Oxalis smiles, reaching out to touch the princess.
Jean instinctively pulls Anemone away, shielding her from the Duke's touch. Duke Oxalis reaches out a hand toward Prince Jean and the baby. A brilliant light flashes from the baby's forehead.
Wah! Duke Oxalis cries out as his hand is zapped by a magical force.
As guards rush in asking what happened, the Duke dismisses them, claiming it was nothing. Anemone glares defiantly, vowing not to let him touch her family. The Duke stares suspiciously at the prince and the princess.
The king and queen rush over, asking if their children are all right. Jean assures them they are fine.
Feeling tired and sleepy, baby Anemone begins to doze off.
Jean looks down thoughtfully at his sleeping sister.
He stands holding Anemone, a protective aura surrounding them.
Jean lets out a triumphant laugh, holding his sister.
He realizes his little sister must be the reincarnation of a saint. A flashback shows a younger Jean smiling brightly with a bouquet of flowers. The flowers were meant as a bouquet of thanks. Years later, an older Jean meets with a blonde-haired man in a lavish room. Jean thoughtfully concludes that it seems to be the case. The blonde man admits he is struggling to find a countermeasure.
A young girl in a pink dress enters the room.
Jean comments that it seems shoddy products are all the rage these days. The blonde-haired man maintains a serious expression. In another room, two men greet a blonde man as grandfather. He smiles warmly at a young blue-haired girl who affirms his statement. This man is Duke Renoa Dowal, the Queen's father and head of the kingdom's magic law office. The Duke explains a fake is hard to spot, and the girl wishes she could see the difference.
An ornate pink potion bottle sits on a table among other magical items.
The man in green confirms his orders as the Duke and the girl watch. The young girl's eyes glow as she channels her power.
The pink potion bottle on the table begins to radiate a magical light.
The Duke is stunned as the girl realizes the item is reacting to leftover mana, proving it's genuine. The Duke excitedly gestures to the gray-haired young man. The girl looks down with a somber expression as the Duke stands behind her.
Unsure of the dangers ahead, she recalls the malicious smiles of her former father and sister. A memory shows her as a child using her magic on a plant for two adults.
As the plant instantly blooms a rose, the adults cheer in amazement. Her unique, glowing eyes are the source of her power. She believes she can see mana because of these eyes, which she developed in the royal library. She diligently studied, learning to read letters and even ancient languages. Recalling her past as a stupid and useless idiot, she knows that now things are different. The smug faces of her former father and sister appear in her memory. She reads intently,
determined to prepare for what's to come.
In the future, she remembers, her sister Catalia was adored as a bride by all.
Her father used her untimely death to win public favor, and she realizes they lived happily ever after on her sacrifice. But now she has things she wants to protect as she stands resolutely in the library.
A young tutor with gray hair tied in a ponytail smiles warmly.
He offers a book to the young blue-haired girl.
The tutor smiles, pleased with his student's interest.
The girl accepts the book with wide, curious eyes.
The tutor playfully scolds her for getting lost in a book and forgetting their promise, recalling how he waited alone for dinner. She apologizes profusely, admitting she didn't realize how late it had gotten.
The two sit together at a large table, absorbed in their studies.
A young anemone asks her brother about the divine beast.
Her brother explains it's the leader of light magic, bringing purity and peace.
He continues his lesson, explaining how magic circulates between the body and the atmosphere as she listens intently. He worries he'll run out of things to teach the fast-learning anemone.
She beams, absorbing his every word.
He realizes her drive comes from a competitive nature, thinking she hates to lose.
Admiring her spirit, he smiles and says he thinks it's great.
She asks why he avoids the library, and he champions the value of first-hand experience.
He smiles, delighted by the thought of showing her the world. He eagerly suggests they book an act and invite the kingdom's best band. Anemone feels guilty about her brother using his precious vacation time on her. An attendant interrupts, informing the crown prince that it's time to leave. Her brother passionately declares he will do anything for her sake. Later, a female attendant in a green coat calls out to Lady Anemone at a doorway. The attendant informs her that the queen is calling for her, and Anemone wonders why her mother wants to see her.
She follows the attendant, nervously pondering her mother's request.
Anemone sits for tea with her mother at an elegant table. The two share a quiet moment over tea and pastries.
While sipping her tea, Anemone wonders if the meeting is about the magic school. She looks across the table at her elegantly smiling mother.
Anemone calmly takes another sip of her tea.
She voices her concern, stating that at only 6 years old, she'll stand out too much.
Her mother assures her that they will support her wholeheartedly.
The queen smiles warmly, certain that everyone will support Anemone. Anemone accepts her mother's words with a simple, "Good." The elegant tea setting remains as mother and daughter continue their discussion. The queen smiles, pleased with the outcome of their conversation. In a separate scene, a gleeful pink-haired girl watches as another girl cries over a spill on the floor. Anemone sits alone in a lavish room, lost in thought. She recalls her brother's promise to always be there for her. Peering out the window, she questions if seeking revenge is worth sacrificing her current happiness. Overwhelmed, she closes her eyes, admitting all she feels is tiredness. The scene shifts to a garden gazebo where Anemone has tea with other young noble girls. A blonde-haired girl proudly tells Anemone that their chef made the pastry. Another girl offers her tea from the east, boasting of its wonderful flavor. A gray-haired girl expresses her excitement, eager to ask her father for the same tea. Anemone feels isolated, noting that everyone is only talking about themselves. She silently sips her tea while one of the girls chatters on beside her. The brown-haired girl brags that she used magic recently and was praised by her tutor. Anemone thinks to herself that it should be difficult for a child to control magical power. The girl shows off, summoning a bright golden light that levitates the teacups and pastries.
Yeah, the magic goes haywire, and Anemone quickly shields another girl as teacups begin to fall.
The gray-haired girl screams in terror as the chaos erupts. Anemone reaches out frantically, her eyes wide with alarm. She throws herself over the crying girl, shielding her from the falling liquid.
The hot tea splashes directly onto the back of Anemone's head.
Crash! The entire tea set smashes to the ground in a chaotic mess.
Anemone pants on the floor amidst the wreckage, the other girls looking on in shock. Her eyes blaze with fury as she realizes what just happened.
She angrily confronts the stunned, brown-haired girl, shouting that magic isn't a toy. A young girl with brown hair cries with distress. The blue-haired girl looks back in surprise. She stands alone as other girls console their friend, her actions having averted trouble. A well-dressed, blonde-haired boy appears, smiling among the roses. He asks who she is. He introduces himself as Ryuka Fo Gabella.
With a tear in her eye, she thanks him very much.
Ryuka praises her for bravely standing up to protect the other girl. He passionately declares his amazement and asks to serve her.
When she questions his offer, he affirms his desire to become her knight. The two children stand opposite each other in a quiet moment.
She glances back at him with a gentle, contemplative look. Her expression turns serious and determined. A memory shows a younger Ryuka smiling beside an older man. The young Ryuka beams with pure joy, surrounded by flowers.
He humbly pledges his future service to His Highness.
The gray-haired man explains to Anemone that Ryuka is Cecilia's son. A woman named Cecilia, holding baby Anemone, speaks of the Gabella family's fame as knights.
The gray-haired man proposes Ryuka become Anemone's conversation partner, asking for her thoughts.
She respectfully thanks her father for the arrangement.
In a lavish room, Ryuka and Anemone sit down for tea. Anemone quietly sips her tea, lost in thought. Ryuka smiles warmly as he enjoys his tea. Anemone looks up from her cup with a curious expression. The gray-haired man explains he heard of her kindness from Prince Jean. A close-up highlights Ryuka's formal attire. He explains the feeling of being captivated by someone at first sight. Anemone listens with a look of innocent curiosity. Ryuka smiles radiantly, placing a hand over his heart. She stares back, taking in his words. Later that night, Anemone sleeps soundly in her bed. She sits up, a vision of Ryuka's smile in her mind. She kneels in her nightgown, contemplating her thoughts alone. A blurry vision of a village appears as she questions what she sees. The vision shifts to a familiar blue-haired woman and gray-haired man with soldiers. A chaotic nightmare unfolds. A cliff, falling soldiers, and looks of horror. In the dream, the man and woman grieve in each other's arms. The vision ends with a bloody, lifeless arm. Her eyes fly open, wide with shock. She sits bolt upright in bed, panting from the terrifying dream. She frantically wonders if what she saw was just a dream.
Trembling in her bed, she looks pale and frightened.
While studying, she finds she can't shake the memory of the dream. Her book depicts a crowd gathered around a magnificent unicorn. An illustration shows a goddess-like woman tenderly embracing the unicorn. She reads on, wondering if her nightmare was a prophetic dream. Alone at her desk, she fears the horrific vision might come true. A flash of the falling soldiers returns to her mind. The image of the grieving couple haunts her. She buries her head in her book, trying to convince herself it was only a nightmare. The royal family has a pleasant tea time together. The king announces he'll be away inspecting the regions. As Jean listens, Anemone realizes this trip matches her premonition of landslides. She looks on with a deeply worried expression. Anemone sits up straight, her face filled with sudden resolve.
Jean simply acknowledges his father's plan. Determined to intervene, Anemone requests to go with them.
The queen gently denies her request, promising souvenirs instead.
Her mother smiles, patting her head reassuringly.
Anemone looks down, disheartened by their refusal.
Jean offers a solution. He will accompany Anemone on the trip.
He smiles, thinking a trip with his sister sounds nice. The king agrees, feeling relieved that Jean will be with her.
Jean watches his parents, his expression calm and steady.
Their royal carriage travels to the lush Rodea region.
The family rides together on their way to the inspection.
Anemone learns Cecilia prepared a bento for their shared trip. She happily accepts a sandwich from the lunchbox.
The royal family enjoys their meal together inside the carriage. The grand carriage proceeds along the forest road.
Upon arrival, the queen cheerfully distributes food to the villagers.
Jean and Anemone take a stroll through the nearby woods.
He remarks that the scenery is lovely despite the recent rain.
Anemone looks around, quietly observing her surroundings.
Jean looks down at his sister with a thoughtful expression. He asks why she was so insistent on coming, sensing she's hiding something. Anemone looks away, unable to meet his gaze.
She deflects his question with a bright smile, calling him strange. A joyful Ruika runs towards them, waving happily. Jean recognizes Ruka as he approaches them on the path.
Ryoka beams, his smile as bright as the flowers around him. Anemone watches her friend approach.
The three children reunite in the forest.
They stand together on the quiet woodland path. Holding his sleeping sister, Jean declares himself Anemone's knight.
She reminds him he's the crown prince, but he insists it's a matter of emotion.
Ryuka admits he can't compete with their close bond.
As they walk on, Ryuka calls out that he's envious.
He continues to smile, admiring their sibling relationship. Anemone and Ryuka share a quiet moment together.
Jean's thought is cut short by a desperate cry for help.
The three of them turn in shock toward the sudden shout.
Jean and Ryuka agree to help, telling Anemone to stay put.
She watches as her brother and friend rush off to the rescue. Left alone, Anemone knows she has her own mission to fulfill.
She sits with her book, wondering if her dream was a prophecy. Standing with resolve, she decides she won't live with regret.
Her eyes shine with determination as she clutches her book.
She follows a path deeper into the woods alone.
Looking up at the sky, she recognizes this as the place from her dream.
Anemone trips over a gnarled root while walking in the woods.
She falls hard, crying out as she hits the ground.
With a pained expression, she pushes herself up, her face smudged with dirt. Shaking it off, she continues on her path into the forest. She grabs a thick vine, beginning to climb a steep embankment.
She scales the rocky cliff face, thinking she must hurry.
As she climbs, a green snake slithers past a lizard on the ground below. Her small, dirty hands grip the edge of the cliff as she pulls herself up.
Reaching the top, she recognizes the scenery from her premonition. The wide view shows just how high she has climbed.
Looking over the village, she realizes how high up she is.
She prepares a grimoire to boost her power and a crystal to stabilize it. With grim determination, she closes her eyes to focus her energy. Clutching the magical items, she steels herself, thinking, "You can do it."
A deep rumble echoes as rocks and earth begin to shift.
Her eyes snap open in alarm. She knows the landslide is starting.
As rocks begin to fall, she stands her ground, ready to face the disaster.
She remains calm amid the chaos, holding her book and crystal orb. Anemone looks down at the cascading rockslide below her. Elsewhere, Jean and Ryuka look up, startled by the sudden noise. Jean splashes through the water to rescue a drowning child.
as onlookers watch. He brings the child safely to the bank, where Ryuka helps him out. The grateful family embraces their child as Jean and Ryoka watch, relieved. Standing together on the path, they wonder where Anemone went. Ryuka kneels, excitedly telling Prince Jean he's found Lady Anemone's footprints. A sudden, powerful rumble startles Jean as he looks up toward the sound. The rumbling intensifies, showing Jean's alarm, the king commanding his knights, and the queen with the children. Ryuka points in terror, shouting to His Highness about the mountain. As the landslide crashes down, Ryuka realizes with horror that Lady Anemone is over there. Ryuka calls out to Prince Jean, who is already starting to move. Jean sprints desperately toward the mountain to find his sister. His face is etched with panic as he races to the rescue. A sweet memory of a smiling anemone flashes through his mind. The landslide continues, shaking the ground violently. Anemone stands firm, her magical items ready. The deafening roar of falling boulders fills the air. She winces, straining with all her might to channel her power. A memory appears of her father holding her as a small child. Another memory shows her smiling mother tying a bow in her hair. A final memory shows Jean presenting her with a bouquet of flowers. Her eyes widen with exertion, sweat beading on her face. The king shouts for a situation report, and a soldier confirms a landslide has occurred. A soldier whispers the grim news to the concerned king. The king asks if the evacuation has begun as an official tries to calm the worried villagers, knowing they're still in danger. A soldier urges His Majesty to evacuate to safety immediately. The king and his men stare up at the treacherous, rainy mountainside. Ryuka pushes through the dense forest, desperately searching for Anemone. Jean looks on with a panicked expression, thinking he's never seen His Highness in such a panic.
Ryuka runs through the woods, determined to find Lady Anemone.
He stops, his face filled with shock and dawning horror. Ryuka runs frantically up the hill. His face is tight with panic. As Ryuka sprints through the woods, he desperately calls out Anemone's name. In a memory, he asks a young Anemone if she ever tires of reading. She says no. He recalls tearfully promising that she could always count on him for anything. In another memory, Anemone says she feels safe with her brother, and Ryuka smiles. He remembers pleading with her to count on him. His desperate thought echoes, "Please be safe." The catastrophic landslide continues its destructive path. Suddenly, a powerful barrier shatters under the strain. Anemone looks up, her eyes wide with shock. Glowing with power, she stands against the disaster as her parents watch in horror from afar. She resolves that she cannot let the tragedy from her dream happen. A torrent of blue magical energy bursts forth. The power coalesces into a massive, intricate magic circle. Her eyes burn with fierce determination. The magical blast collides with the falling rocks. She strains with all her might, sweat pouring down her dirt-smudged face. She closes her eyes, praying to protect what's important to her. Crisscrossing lines of light etch themselves into the ground around her. Her spell culminates in a blinding explosion of white light. In the aftermath, she stands alone in the now quiet ravine, her blood on the book beside her. Looking up at the clear sky, she wonders if it's finally over. Her blood-stained grimoire lies on the dirt. She clutches her chest, smiling in exhausted relief. A sudden cough forces blood from her mouth. Collapsing from the immense pressure, she finds she cannot move as the ground beneath her cracks. The ground finally gives way beneath her feet. "Ah!" she cries out as the ground crumbles, and she falls into the abyss. Lying at the bottom of the chasm, she realizes she can no longer use her magic.
She accepts her fate, noting the irony of falling from another cliff.
Closing her eyes, she wishes she could have lived just a bit longer. Paralyzed and powerless, she lies helpless at the bottom of the ravine.
Her last thought is a simple wish to have lived longer.
A vision appears of a pink-haired girl collapsed on a desk as a man laughs menacingly. Another vision shows a different pink-haired girl smiling with cunning intent.
A loving memory of her mother holding her as a baby surfaces. She recalls a happy moment of Jean placing a flower in her hair.
Jean's face appears in her mind, contorted in absolute terror.
Reaching the edge, Jean dives and catches his sister's hand just in time.
He holds on desperately, pleading for her to open her eyes.
Lying precariously on the cliff's edge, he begs her to take his hand. He pulls her to safety and embraces her as she realizes she's been allowed to live. Later, tucked safely in her bed, her father watches with relief as her mother cares for her.
The king clasps his hands, overwhelmed with gratitude. He explains that he immediately summoned the most skilled doctors and mages in Rhodia. On a nearby sofa, Jean and Ryuka sleep, completely exhausted.
Anemone awakens to the sight of her smiling mother sitting by her bedside.
A faint memory shows Ryuka running toward Jean, who sat vigil at the cliff's edge.
She recalls her parents arriving to find Jean holding her, with Ryuka standing by.
A blonde boy watches as a blue-haired girl is comforted. A young blue-haired girl stands between a blonde boy and a dark-haired man.
A pink-haired woman stands peacefully in a rose garden.
A gray-haired nobleman calls out the name Catalia.
Her father tells Catalia it is time to return to the estate, as Crown Prince Vernon is coming for her.
Catalia calmly agrees to her father's request.
With a bloody finger and a sinister smile, Catalia muses that a flower that is only beautiful is boring. She breaks into a wide, triumphant laugh.
With a sly look, she touches her lip, thinking, "I'm so bored."
Catalia stares ahead, her hand with a bloody finger held before her face. She smiles coldly, believing a merely beautiful flower is boring.
Touching her lip, she again laments her profound boredom.
Her father watches her from a distance with a serious expression.
In another memory, a younger Catalia basks in the applause of a crowd.
At a funeral, her father reflects that his fortune is thanks to Camille's death.
Ugh, he clutches his chest, suddenly struck by a wave of unease as he thinks of a sleeping, blue-haired baby.
Brushing off his discomfort, he asks Catalia if she was sad on the day Camille died. Catalia stands silently, her expression neutral. As her father begins to confess the truth about the accident, she quickly covers his mouth. She raises a finger to her lips, silencing him with a menacing glare. Her father stares back, his face pale with shock and fear. Catalia innocently chides him for scaring away the birds with his loud voice. He stammers at a loss for words. Her demeanor shifts instantly as she lets out a joyous, carefree laugh. She takes his hand, cheerfully saying, "They must not keep the crown prince waiting." Her father thinks to himself that beyond her beauty, his daughter terrifies him. She leads him away, looking back with a bright, innocent smile. Her sweet expression vanishes, replaced by a cold smirk as she decides it's time for a new toy. A young anemone unleashes a powerful burst of blue magic. The magic flows into a crystal orb, and her eyes widen with focus. Two men watch in awe as the crystal emits a powerful, deep blue glow, calling it a wonderful reaction. One man declares Lady Anemone's talent may even rival the founding saint, Lycol.
The gray-haired man proudly places a hand on her shoulder, recognizing her amazing power.
He affectionately pats young Anemone on the head. He suggests publicizing her power for the nation's prestige, but then asks Anemone for her decision.
Respecting her unspoken wish, a decision is made to classify her ability as a state secret. The gray-haired man sternly warns his colleague to stay silent on pain of death.
He shares a quiet, gentle moment with a trusting Anemone.
The scene transitions through a frame of white flowers.
Anemone reaches out to a blonde boy.
He takes her hands and they share an intense gaze.
Anemone stands before her brother, who is sitting stoically, and the crying blonde boy.
The blonde boy clutches her hand tightly.
Her gray-haired brother looks on with a soft, knowing smile.
Masked guards patrol the ramparts of a stone castle. An army of soldiers assembles before a formidable fortress tower. A determined older anemone in a white hood observes the scene.
A masked enemy hurls a vial of dark magic toward the soldiers. Gwa! The purple energy ensnares the soldiers, who cry out in agony.
Luminous blue magic circles flare to life around Anemone's gown. Anemone checks on a stunned guard. She unleashes a massive magic circle.
Her magic ensnares the masked enemies.
A guard watches her power, amazed.
A man reports the masterminds escaped.
She confidently states Ryuka is there.
The escaping enemies are suddenly blocked. A blonde swordsman intercepts their escape.
The enemy curses, casting dark magic.
Ryuka moves to counter the spell. Eek! He pins the enemy's head. Ryuka stands victorious over his foe.
He smiles, satisfied with his work.
He stands before her, expecting something.
Her worried knight gets an earful.
She gently touches his wounded cheek. She softly thanks her concerned knight.
Anemone gives a brilliant, warm smile.
The blonde knight continues the conversation.
Their elegant carriage travels onward.
10 years later, she studies magic.
She now oversees the kingdom's artifacts.
She notes how strong Ryuka's become.
She asks if he was angry before.
She says it's natural for him to worry.
She admits she enjoys his scolding.
He asks if she will attend the ball.
She's 16. He is now 20.
A moment of quiet, somber thought. The horses gallop at full speed.
The carriage stops, throwing her forward.
A small girl stands in their path. He steps out to handle the situation.
He gently takes the flowers from her.
The little girl recognizes Lady Anemone. Ryuka presents her with the flowers.
Anemone kindly pats the girl's head.
A warm moment is shared between them.
The girl mentions a black collar. Anemone questions the strange statement. The child's words trigger a dark image. Guards discuss the growing danger. A guard decides to report a rumor.
They examine the mysterious black collar.
Anemone realizes its terrifying power.
The collar's magic defies analysis.
Anemone uses her magic to analyze it.
She identifies an unbreakable locking spell. She discovers it uses its host's magic.
She concludes it's a parasitic artifact. A pink-haired woman wonders who would seek such a thing.
A blonde man praises a blue-haired woman's excellent analysis.
They discuss a rare purple spinel, mined in few places.
The blue-haired woman orders an examination of the mines and workshops.
The blonde man insists Lady Anemone stay behind for her safety.
Hooded figures conduct a clandestine meeting at night, their usual leader absent.
A blonde boy smirks, promising he has plenty to satisfy them.
With a sudden swish, white-cloaked knights draw their swords.
The knights move in, surrounding their targets.
The knights attack, catching a red-haired man by surprise.
Held at sword point, the man reveals he is Luca of the Royal Knights.
The captured royal knight is taken into a nearby building. The blonde boy activates a glowing purple device under the full moon.
Two maids nervously prepare a worried anemone for an event. The maids excitedly promise to prepare the finest dress for Lady Anemone. Anemone looks on with an anxious expression. She stands uneasily as her maids continue their work.
The maids enthusiastically prepare her finest dress.
A grand golden ballroom is filled with anonymous nobles.
Anemone appears, looking elegant and poised in her formal attire.
She walks gracefully through the bustling grand hall.
A man in a formal blue cape greets Anemone warmly.
A group of nobles praise Lady Anemone's talent and supervisory work.
Feeling overwhelmed by invitations, she is rescued by a gentleman's intervention. A quiet voice reassures her that she is fine now. Anemone's mood lifts as she breaks into a radiant smile.
She walks alone down an opulent palace corridor. Her parents watch from a distance, remarking proudly on how she's grown. A group of noble ladies murmur amongst themselves.
Kya? Prince Jean's arrival makes the young ladies swoon. He politely turns down a young lady's invitation to dance. He navigates the crowd of his admirers with a calm smile. Suddenly, he catches a dark-haired woman as she stumbles. He gently asks the woman if she is all right. He helps her up, recognizing her as Miss Restard from the festival preparations.
Surprised he knows her, she listens as he explains he remembers his loyal subjects. Noticing her blush, he kindly suggests she take a moment to rest.
Guards escort the flustered Miss Restard away as Jean watches her go.
He turns and walks away, leaving the crowd of ladies behind.
With a gentle smile, he calls out his sister's name.
Anemone turns and returns his warm smile. He asks if she has finished her greetings, and she admits she's savoring the ball.
He kindly offers to be her escort for the evening. Dismissing the formalities, he asks if she is overexerting herself.
He offers to shield her from the nobles, but she finds him overprotective. She smiles, happily agreeing to lean on him just a little.
He beams, content to be by her side.
Together, they pause to listen to the violinists.
Anemone steps out into a beautiful moonlit garden for a quiet moment. Ryuka finds Lady Anemone, explaining he'd been searching for her. Anemone asks if it's all right for him to be here. Ryuka admits it's not.
Ladies at the ball call for Sir Ryuka, wondering where he has gone.
He smiles, saying he is happier by Lady Anemone's side. She recalls that Ryuka has served her for 10 years, since the Rodea disaster. Anemone tells him that he doesn't have to be so loyal.
Ryuka gazes at her with a gentle, unwavering expression.
She asks why he's laughing as he covers his mouth with a chuckle. He gently drapes a shawl over her shoulders. They share an intimate, heartfelt look under the moonlight.
The scene transitions.
The setting shifts to the royal capital of the Anfis kingdom.
A blonde man and a pink-haired woman ride through cheering crowds in a grand procession.
Onlookers praise Lady Catalia, hoping she will become queen, and noting her closeness to the crown prince.
A citizen calls out to Lady Catalia, tossing her a bouquet of flowers.
A beautiful bouquet of yellow and orange flowers soars through the air.
Lady Catalia gracefully catches the flowers.
She holds the bouquet and lets out a joyful laugh.
The Anfis Kingdom's castle is shown under a dark, moonlit sky.
Lady Catalia inspects a magic tool as a man explains it can control monsters.
The man, a defector from Lycal, begs for his family's safety.
She smiles and promises to guarantee his family's well-being.
Dissatisfied, she suggests a more interesting tool, one that controls humans.
She laughs with sinister delight, holding a remote-like device.
Yeah,
The man cries out in sudden terror.
His wife and child are held at sword point by grim-faced guards. He screams their names, Sasha and Al, in horror. With a cruel smile, Catalia presents a magical collar.
She grabs the terrified man by the chin, forcing his head back.
With the collar fastened around his neck, she prepares her command. Her eyes glow ominously as she asks if he will follow her orders. Elsewhere, a blond man slams his desk, shouting about inferior frontier people. Catalia peeks into the room with a bright, innocent smile. The man greets Catalia, asking if she finished with the Lycal defector. She embraces him, resting her head contentedly on his chest. She reveals a letter from Lycal's crown prince challenging their slave system. The man's face burns with rage, declaring slaves an important asset. He crushes an apple in his hand, cursing the name Jean Lycal Gentiana. Catalia pulls him closer with a sly, calculating look. She asks if he wants to retaliate against Lycal, and he eagerly agrees. Her eyes widen with wicked excitement at his response. The scene shifts to a majestic castle with red rooftops. Anemone is stunned by a room overflowing with gifts. She discovers a touching letter from one of the orphans she supports. Holding the letter to her heart, she smiles with genuine warmth. Her family's castle stands serenely under the full moon. In her bed, Anemone tosses and turns, trapped in a nightmare. Sweat beads on her brow as her dream becomes more troubling. A vision shows a desolate, gray-haired man standing alone in a grand throne room. The vision focuses on his solitary footsteps. He walks away from the throne, his back turned to the world.
In a nightmare, Anemone screams for her brother to stop as he stands on a high balcony. A hand points down as the gray-haired man begins to fall from the railing. He plummets through the air as a cloaked figure watches from above. A strange purple glow emanates from a collar around the falling man's neck. The mysterious figure stands alone on the balcony, shrouded in darkness. The horrifying vision ends with a lifeless hand in a splatter of blood.
Anemone's screams for her brother echo in the dark void of her dream.
She jolts awake, panting heavily from the terrifying nightmare.
Covering her face, she wonders why she keeps having the same prophetic dream.
The scene fractures, representing her chaotic and racing thoughts.
With tears in her eyes, she vows to prevent his death and change the future. Focused, she buries herself in research at her desk, surrounded by books.
She recalls the black collar from her dream, suspecting one may have escaped confiscation.
The distinct architecture and her own dress from the vision flashed in her mind. Her eyes widen with dawning horror as she begins to understand the vision.
With a single tear and a hardened gaze, her resolve is set.
Elsewhere in the palace, 3 maids are busy with their cleaning duties. One of the maids mentions that she hasn't seen Lady Anemone around lately. Another confirms she heard Anemone is researching, likely working nonstop. The maids share a moment of concern, hoping she is okay.
As night falls on the castle, a single light remains on in her study.
A servant brings refreshments to Anemone, still engrossed in her books.
Ryuka reports the collar maker's arrest, but Anemone confesses she has a bad feeling. The ominous figure from her dream senses something stirring in secret places.
A thought confirms the lurking presence of someone with an evil heart. Surrounded by her family, Anemone reaffirms her commitment to protect them all.
Unable to watch her struggle alone, Ryuka asks to help with her work.
She looks up with a warm smile, gratefully thanking him for his offer. The scene transitions, showing a serene and beautiful moonlit sky. A royal guard approaches Jean, holding out an official letter for him.
He learns it is a joint invitation from the crown prince and princess of Anfis.
Jean recalls his recent protest against Anfis's slave system, feeling suspicious. He realizes the invitation is a political performance to feign peaceful intentions. Holding the red envelope, he silently contemplates their motives. Lost in thought, he considers the implications of the unexpected invitation. With a look of resolve, Jean announces that he will accept their invitation. A royal carriage stands ready outside the palace for the upcoming journey. As preparations are made, Jean looks troubled, asking himself what this is about. Anemone stands beside Jean, both dressed in traveling cloaks, ready to depart. Jean turns to Ruka, challenging him to stop Anemone if he truly objects. He then lets out a hearty and confident laugh. Jean reveals that he has already received their father's approval for the trip. He warns them both that Anfis is dangerous, a country that supports slavery. Anemone looks at her brother earnestly, promising not to be a burden. Her expression is full of bright, unwavering determination. She pleads with him, asking him to please let her come along.
Resigned, Jean holds open the carriage door for Anemone and Ryuka. Inside the carriage, Jean details Anfis's other issues, like growing poverty.
Anemone steels herself, pushing aside unpleasant memories of Anfis.
She affirms that to save her brother, she can endure this much.
Their carriage arrives at a secluded manor under the full moon. A memory floods in of a pink-haired girl crying, begging for it to stop.
She watches in horror as a man viciously beats a maid with a cane.
A younger, pig-tailed girl grabs her from behind, telling her not to look away. In the memory, the pig-tailed girl, Catalia, claims a maid stole her ring, but her sister cries out that it's a lie. Catalia asks what she did wrong, then possessively tells her sister she can't be close to anyone else. Her sister tearfully agrees, begging Catalia to stop being cruel to others. She forces a pained, tear-streaked smile. With glowing eyes, Catalia tells her father to stop the beating, and he complies as the maid lies motionless. Catalia smiles sweetly at her sister, praising her for being obedient. Her sister collapses in despair, realizing she just wanted someone to support her. She sobs, blaming her own wishes for the tragedy and apologizing over and over. Anemone jolts awake from the nightmare, realizing thoughts of Anfis and her brother's death are triggering these memories. She closes her eyes, a single bead of sweat rolling down her face. Hearing a sound, Ryuka peeks into her room from the hallway. She feigns wellness, blaming her sickness on excitement about their first trip.
Ryuka appears in a gentle glow, taking her hand to comfort her.
He humbly admits his magic isn't strong, but it's all he can offer her. Anemone closes her eyes, feeling a sense of nostalgia from his magic.
She asks Ryuka to stay with her, and he promises to remain by her side as long as she needs.
Finding peace in his presence, she tells him not to worry. The scene shifts to the bleak, overcast town square of Anfis. As their ornate carriage rolls through town, Anemone peeks through the curtain. With a heavy heart, she thinks about her return to the country that killed her. They arrive at the imposing and magnificent Anfis royal castle. Jean and Anemone stand together formally, ready to face what's to come. Anemone offers a polite thank you. She steels herself for an audience with the crown prince and Catalia, now the crown princess. She glances nervously at Jean, a worried expression on her face. Anemone reaffirms her vow to stay by her brother's side to prevent his death. Resolving not to run from her past, she follows Jean and Ryuka down a grand hallway. A servant announces their arrival before a set of ornate golden doors. Inside, a blond man sits arrogantly on a throne with his arms crossed. He introduces himself with a sharp gaze as Venin dis Anfis.
Venin and a pink-haired woman welcome the visitors from Lycal from their thrones. He addresses them from his seat, permitting them to raise their heads.
Jean looks up, his expression unreadable.
Anemone looks at the pink-haired woman, thinking that the cruel child from her past now stands before her. A painful memory surfaces of her past self kneeling while a gleeful Catalia watched. Anemone bites her lip, her expression hardening with tension.
On the throne beside Venin, Catalia sits with regal composure.
She offers a serene, almost condescending smile. Looking down, Anemone formally introduces herself as Anemone Lycal Gentiana.
Catalia smiles, welcoming Lady Anemone to Anfis.
Jean and Anemone stand before Catalia, who greets them from her seat. Venin remarks that while Jean is handsome, Catalia is far more beautiful. He invites Prince Jean to witness the excellence of slave labor firsthand to clear up his misunderstandings. Jean calmly agrees, stating he wishes to understand the reality of their country. Venin lets out a condescending laugh, finding Jean's response eloquent.
Jean returns the compliment, and Venin's smirk falters into a scowl of irritation.
A pink-haired woman in a red gown remarks that the country is wonderful. She closes her eyes, laughing with pure, unadulterated joy. A gray-haired man in a military uniform vows to do his best. He stands formally beside a blue-haired woman in a green dress. The blue-haired woman bows her head as the man turns to leave. She glances back with a nervous, startled expression. The blue-haired woman walks forward alone on a grand red carpet. The pink-haired woman smiles, apologizing for calling out to someone. Seeing the man and blue-haired woman in a distant doorway, the pink-haired woman's expression hardens as she decides to hurry. The scene shifts to a bustling, sunlit town street. Ryuka and a hooded companion walk through the cobblestone streets.
Elsewhere, Anemone clasps her hands, her expression filled with hope.
The hooded figure informs Lord Ryuka they have located the researcher. Ryuka resolves to fulfill the mission entrusted to him by Lady Anemone. He orders his companion to lead the way, and the person complies. In a dark room, a pink-haired woman in a black veil, Catalia, presides over a meeting with a researcher, guarded by two axemen. Holding a glowing purple brooch, the researcher explains that per Lady Catalia's orders, he has re-engineered the device to make humans obey. As he explains that people would obey gladly, Catalia inspects the device with a deranged smile, calling it wonderfully made. The researcher nervously asks if he'll be freed, and Catalia thanks him for his work, promising to set him free. A hooded assassin suddenly stabs the researcher from behind. Gwa! Ah! The dying man screams that this is a betrayal, yelling for Sasha and I to run as a hand reaches out. A terrified woman holds a small boy close as a large sword looms over them. Splattered with blood, Catalia smiles cruelly, admiring her new mind control device. She finds her target's unflinching demeanor captivating, seeing him as a worthy prize as she clutches the device. Ryuka and his companion hurry along the cobblestone path. A fine carriage waits nearby as Ryuka approaches. He breaks into a determined run. Night falls over a large, imposing manor.
Bam! Ryuka bursts through the doors with fierce determination.
His eyes widen in horror at the scene before him. They arrive too late, finding the researcher dead in a pool of blood. Ryuka swiftly parries a surprise attack from a black-robed assassin. With his sword drawn, he stands protectively over a small, frightened boy.
The assassin curses and retreats as Ryuka kneels to comfort the trembling child.
An ally asks Lord Ryuka to please take care of the rescued child.
Ryuka walks purposefully down a long stone hallway. He finds the researcher's desk covered in notes and chemical vials. Reading the documents, he discovers the vast extent of their research. The notes confirm modifications to the collar, proving Lady Anemone's suspicions were correct.
A bead of sweat runs down Ryuka's face as he processes the grim findings.
The scene transitions to the magnificent royal castle under a bright sky. Inside, Ryuka reports to Anemone that they didn't make it in time. He stands before her, his expression somber with failure. Anemone studies a report, wondering who could create such a dangerous artifact. A vision of her grim-faced brother flashes in her mind. She thoughtfully considers the report while Ryuka stands by. Ryuka warns that with Prince Venon hosting a ball tonight, danger is imminent. Anemone declares with unwavering resolve that she will protect her brother, no matter the enemy. Moved by her conviction, Ryuka takes her hands, addressing her as Lady Anemone. Her eyes widen, her determination shining amidst a field of white roses. Anemone speaks with her brother, Jean, who looks thoughtful. The scene shifts to a magnificent golden ballroom filled with party guests. Anemone looks lovely and serene, framed by beautiful pink roses. Ryuka smiles warmly, surrounded by golden flowers. Two women in the crowd gossip about the wonderful crown prince of Lycol. Jean turns to Anemone, asking if she'll be all right alone. He walks away, leaving her standing by herself on the ornate carpet. Looking back with concern, he asks once more if she is sure. Anemone gives him a cheerful wave, assuring him she'll be fine. Jean disappears into the crowd of nobles. Anemone stands alone amidst the bustling party guests. Elsewhere in the ballroom, three ladies share a laugh. A voice suddenly calls out to Princess Anemone, startling her. An older man with a mustache appears, saying it's an honor to meet her again. Anemone stares at him, her face a mask of pure shock. Her expression contorts in utter horror and disbelief. Anemone grants him permission to speak, but her mind races, flashing back to a terrifying vision as she wonders why he is here. The older man stands before her, waiting to speak. Anemone impatiently asks what he wants to say to her. The man asks if he may tell her about his proposal. He asks her to accept someone as a potential fiancé. Stunned, Anemone wonders what on earth he is talking about. She realizes with dawning horror that he intends to use her. Clenching her fist, she considers a dark possibility. She imagines grabbing the man and demanding he beg for forgiveness. In her fantasy, the man looks utterly terrified. Returning to reality, Anemone addresses him coldly as Duke Oxalis. Filled with rage, she orders him to leave her sight immediately. Anemone turns her back on the stunned Duke Oxalis. With a sharp turn, she internally vows to never forgive him.
Her resolve hardens, her expression determined and serene.
Looking around anxiously, Anemone wonders where her brother has gone. Jean and an attendant walk down a long, gilded hallway. The attendant stops and asks Jean to please wait here. Jean reflects that he came to discuss slavery, but feels a bad vibe as he stares into an empty throne room. The scene shifts to the pink-haired Catalia, who smiles beautifully. Catalia appears, asking Jean why he is there, and explaining the prince was called away. Jean correctly deduces that she sent the invitation, not the prince, and wonders why she wanted to speak with him alone. He acknowledges that he knows slavery is their country's foundation, and that she invited him here to intervene. With a polite smile, Jean tells Catalia
Her statement is inappropriate for a princess.
She calls his words horrible, but then confirms she asked her husband to write the invitation.
As she speaks, Jean is taken aback by the sudden scent of flowers.
Catalia smiles confidently, stating her desire is simple. Jean reels back in shock, realizing with horror that he's been caught in magic. Revealing a glowing bracelet, Catalia grins, confessing she wanted to get her hands on him. She steps forward, reaching for his collar, as a magical purple aura surrounds them.
Jean chokes, clutching his throat as a strange power takes hold.
Holding his face, Catalia muses that someone so innocent is perfect for her plan. She laughs with wicked delight, eager to see how he will break.
Leaning in close, Catalia whispers a command to her dear, "Get down on your knees."
With a sinister grin, Catalia commands him to listen to her orders.
Now kneeling before her, Jean is commanded to kiss her.
He kisses her shoe as she claps with delight, praising him for being well-behaved. With a dagger to his head, Catalia brings up the subject of his sister. She gives him a horrifying order: kill Anemone with his own hands. Catalia places the dagger in his hand, explaining how simple it will be to stab his sister.
She eagerly anticipates the look of betrayal on Anemone's face while Jean remains entranced.
Leaning in close, she whispers to Jean, asking if he can complete the task. Jean fights the spell internally, realizing his body won't obey as he silently begs Anemone to run away.
Meanwhile, Anemone walks alone down a magnificent, gilded hallway.
Clasping her hands anxiously, she prays for her brother to be safe. She arrives at a pair of massive, ornate, golden doors.
A sharp sound echoes as Catalia stands waiting in a lavish room.
Surrounded by magical flowers, Catalia turns with a knowing, wicked smile.
The doors swing open, and Anemone stands there, having found the room.
Catalia's eyes glow with delight as she thinks that there is a god after all. Anemone stares in shock at her brother, who stands silently with a glowing magical collar, confirming her fears. She vows to take the collar off, but Jean shouts her name, warning her away.
Clutching the dagger, Jean tells Anemone to stay back, insisting he doesn't want to hurt her.
Watching from the side, Catalia notes Anemone's strong resolve.
Catalia unleashes her power, declaring resistance is futile, as Jean cries out, ensnared by magical chains.
Anemone rushes to Jean's side in a panic, calling out to her brother.
Under the spell's control, Jean's hand snaps out and grabs Anemone by the throat.
Anemone struggles, realizing she cannot use her magic without hurting Jean. Controlled by Catalia's magic, Jean raises the dagger above his helpless sister. A blade flashes and blood splatters against a dark, tense background. An illustrative panel promotes other series available from the publisher. Catalia stares in disbelief as Jean, having stabbed himself to protect his sister, is surrounded by blood. Anemone looks on in horror, but Jean gasps, "Gah!" assuring her that he is okay. Peeking from behind a curtain, Catalia comments on their repulsive brotherly love. With a maniacal grin, she declares her orders are absolute and unleashes more powerful magic.
Ugh! Jean screams as the collar intensifies, purple lightning coursing through him. He shoves Anemone away, yelling for her to run as he feels his consciousness being taken over.
Resisting the spell, he walks toward a balcony, determined not to hurt Anemone. Jean offers a faint, bittersweet smile, his resolve firm despite the glowing collar. He walks resolutely towards the edge of the balcony railing.
Catalia watches with a smug, cruel smile, enjoying the tragic spectacle.
Anemone reaches out in terror, vowing she won't let him die.
Leaping off the balcony after him, she knows her power alone cannot overturn the prophecy.
As they plummet, she closes her eyes and desperately calls for Ryuka.
In a sunlit garden, the blonde-haired Ryuka looks up, his expression suddenly grim.
Ryuka reaches out as a large white cloth billows towards Anemone and Jean.
The cloth envelops the falling siblings, breaking their descent with a soft thud. Ryuka looks on, stunned that Lady Anemone's prediction came true, while Jean lies unconscious on the ground. Anemone frantically tells Rika they have to get the collar off her brother.
As Anemone places a glowing hand on Jean's chest, Ryuka watches from a balcony above.
Catalia looks down from above, sneering that it's no use trying to break her spell.
Jean strains against the magic while Anemone focuses her power.
She tearfully recalls how her brother saved her from despair, resolving that now it is her turn to save him.
With bloody hands outstretched and tears of determination, Anemone unleashes her full power.
Anemone winces, a wave of pain washing over her.
Ryuka catches her as she collapses, crying out her name in alarm.
Her brother looks on flustered as Anemone sits up with Ryuka.
He looks at her with relief, softly saying her name.
Anemone laughs with joy, throwing her arms around her brother.
"Brother!" she cries with relief, thankful that he's safe.
A single tear of gratitude escapes her brother's eye.
The three share a peaceful moment together in a sunlit meadow.
Catalia seethes, annoyed that the collar is off and her magic was broken. She recalls Anemone's reckless actions, jumping without a care in the world. As her brother comforts Anemone, Catalia's thoughts wonder what is wrong with her. Catalia sneers, calling her a disgusting girl. The next day arrives, the scene shifting to a grand castle. Anemone and Ryuka stand together as she reflects on the secret cover-up. A blonde prince and his guards arrive at the scene in the meadow. "What's happened here?" the prince demands, shocked by the sight. An aide reports the assault, blaming Anfis, but the prince seems skeptical, until another man informs him the Oxalis family was called. The prince understands the situation and gives a knowing, sinister smirk.
He offers to summon a healer and promises to find the culprits.
Ryuka visits Anemone's brother as he recovers in bed.
Her brother offers a gentle, knowing smile over his teacup. He observes that their enemies think they can cover up a prince's death.
He claims his memory is hazy, likely because the collar broke.
He clearly identifies the culprit, Princess Catalia, shocking Anemone.
Anemone quietly contemplates whether she can truly hate Catalia.
Ryuka insists an invitation from Catalia is a dangerous trap she must not accept. She wonders what on earth Catalia could possibly be thinking.
The scene transitions to the magnificent Anfis royal palace.
Anemone and Catalia have tea in a lavish garden conservatory.
A table is laden with an exquisite assortment of desserts and tea. Catalia beams, expressing her gladness that Anemone came. Anemone remains composed and observant as Ryuka stands guard. Catalia giggles, encouraging her guest not to be so formal. Maids arrive to serve even more decadent treats.
Catalia proudly presents a platter of rare fruit from the south.
Anemone sighs as Catalia laughs with unbridled delight. Maids fuss over Catalia, pointing out her messy hair and dress. Anemone shifts the conversation, asking about the founding saint, Lycal. Surrounded by blue flowers, Anemone listens with a neutral expression. She reflects internally on the unexpectedness of this peaceful chat. Catalia wistfully wishes she could visit Lycal one day. She then turns to Anemone, asking if she would like to be friends. As Anemone ponders their similarities, Catalia praises her as the talented Saintess of Lycal,
leaving Anemone to wonder if another like her exists.
Catalia lets out a bright, joyous laugh.
Her elegant choker and gown are framed by pink flowers. The new chapter begins at the magnificent palace.
Catalia again praises Anemone as the Saintess, while Anemone internally marvels at meeting someone so similar to herself.
"I can't be friends with you, Catalia," Anemone declares firmly.
Anemone rises from her chair, her decision made.
As she walks away, she thinks to herself, she took the bait.
Catalia laughs condescendingly, calling her a funny girl.
Anemone sits across from Catalia for tea in a sunlit gazebo.
Sipping her tea, Catalia calmly admits she had the black collar made.
When Anemone asks if she put the collar on her brother, Catalia confirms it with a simple, "Yes, I did."
Anemone demands to know why, but Catalia smiles, refusing to talk to anyone who isn't her friend.
Anemone stares back, her expression one of utter shock.
Holding a rose, Catalia smugly wonders who people will believe. Anemone realizes with disgust that Catalia understands everything but simply doesn't care.
Surrounded by falling petals, Catalia maintains her cheerful, unbothered facade.
Anemone grits her teeth, realizing she is being blackmailed. She reflects that her past self, Camille, would have surely succumbed to the threats. But an image of her new family and friends flashes in her mind. Her expression hardens as she declares she won't forgive anyone who harms her family.
Ahahaha! Catalia bursts into delighted, mocking laughter at the threat.
Anemone stares blankly as Catalia continues to laugh uncontrollably.
With a sharp glint in her eyes, Anemone's expression becomes cold and resolute.
She decides there is no longer any point in staying. As she leaves, Catalia gives her a chilling farewell, promising to see her soon.
Anemone stops and asks how Catalia felt when their sister, Camille, died.
With a placid smile, Catalia claims she was sad because they were sisters by blood. She elaborates, saying she was very sorry when her sister died. A horrible understanding dawns on Anemone's face as she sees the truth. She was nothing more than Catalia's favorite toy. Anemone understands now that Catalia uses people and discards them like junk, just as she did with their sister, Camille. Catalia nonchalantly excuses herself, ending their meeting. Walking away, Anemone internally disowns Catalia as her sister. Framed by white flowers, she makes a silent, determined vow to stop her.
Anemone walks down a garden path alone, her purpose renewed. She finds the blonde-haired Raika waiting for her by an ornate gate. Ryuka and Anemone stand together in a field of yellow flowers.
A magnificent royal carriage is waiting nearby to take them home.
Jean greets them with a gentle smile, extending his hand.
He tells them their business is finished and that it's time to return to Lycal. Anemone reflects that her new family means more to her than anything. Jean, Anemone, and Ryuka stand together before the carriage, ready to depart.
In a short comic, a sick Anemone tries to rest, while Jean and Ryuka loudly argue over who gets to take care of her.
A magnificent castle stands tall as narration announces their return from Anfis.
The scene transitions from a beautiful rose garden to Anemone reading peacefully under a tree.
Elsewhere, two maids call out for Lady Anemone, searching for her.
They walk right past her hiding spot, wondering aloud where she could be. Anemone is seen interacting warmly with the happy townspeople. In another scene, she diligently studies with a group of scholars. Back in the mansion, the queen and maids eagerly present her with a new gown.
Sitting alone in the woods, Anemone thinks about the black collar case, which remains unresolved.
She knows this will take time to settle, but fears what will happen if Catalia becomes queen.
Lost in thought, she gently brushes a stray hair from her face.
Suddenly, Ruka appears before her with a bright, happy smile. He tells her that everyone has been looking for her. He gently asks what's wrong, noting that she's skipping her duties. Anemone looks up and simply announces that she is skipping work today.
Ryuka smiles pleasantly, feigning ignorance.
Jean and another man panic, realizing Anemone is not there.
Jean desperately bribes Ryuka to find her, promising him anything.
Both men plead with Ryuka, saying they are counting on him.
Ryuka recounts the story to Anemone, who calls their reaction an exaggeration.
Anemone asks Ryuka if he plans to report her whereabouts.
Lying back in the grass, Ryuka decides he is also skipping work. He smiles, saying they will be in trouble together for skipping.
Anemone returns his smile, enjoying the peaceful moment.
Ryuka looks at her with a fond, blushing expression. He becomes flustered, admitting he can't help it when she calls him my lady.
Anemone smiles brightly, thanking Ryuka as always.
Leaning on his shoulder, she thanks him for always helping her.
With her eyes closed, Anemone admits that she is worried.
She tells Ryuka to cherish his life, reminding him of his bright future. Ryuka declares he finally has the strength to be useful to her.
He smiles, adding that he is truly happy about it. Anemone is visibly moved by his earnest declaration. The two sit together quietly in the serene, sun-dappled woods. Anemone offers to give him anything he desires.
Ryuka simply closes his eyes, enjoying the breeze.
She admits she doesn't want anything, but still feels uneasy. Ryuka hesitates before asking her for one more small favor. He looks at her hopefully, asking her to call him her knight. Anemone looks down with a soft, knowing smile. She takes his hand, calling him by his full name, Ryuka Fogabella. She names him her great, strong knight who serves her.
With a brilliant smile, she asks for his continued support.
Overjoyed, Ryuka beams and gives a heartfelt yes. They sit together in the grass, sharing a moment of blissful contentment. Meanwhile, an angry Jean fumes, wondering where the two of them went. The scene shifts to a grand castle nestled in an autumn forest. A lively town square bustles with vendors and villagers. Anemone and her entourage walk through the town as locals watch. A villager presents her with a large, beautifully wrapped gift. As a couple gets engaged nearby, Anemone overhears a man wondering if he has to give a woman a ring. Ryuka asks if something is wrong, but Anemone dismisses his concern. She remains lost in thought, her expression pensive. A magnificent white and red castle gleams under the sun. In a lavish room, Anemone's parents present her with gifts.
Anemone peeks into a box overflowing with sparkling jewels.
Her parents happily show her precious gems from the East.
Touched by the gesture, she gratefully addresses her father. Her mother offers her a beautiful gown, asking if she'll accept it.
Anemone accepts with a radiant, joyous smile.
Her father presents a ring, wishing her happiness and health. Her parents assure her that they are always on her side. With tears in her eyes, Anemone tells her parents she loves them. She shares a warm embrace with her mother. Elsewhere in the room, Jean and Ryuka sit among piles of gifts. Anemone finds a room filled with presents, asking what they are. Her brother explains they're gifts from the people, calling her the country's most popular girl. He smiles fondly while standing among the flowers and gifts. She looks on in surprise as a delicate ring is presented to her. Her brother offers her the ring, hoping she will always rely on him. Moved, Anemone buries her face in her brother's shoulder for a hug. Embracing him, she declares how proud she is of her big brother. She closes her eyes, cherishing the quiet, tender moment. Anemone looks down at the beautiful ring resting in her palm.
The scene transitions to the exterior of a grand estate. Inside, a brown-haired woman in uniform desperately pleads with Master Ryuka. Presenting a ring, she makes a passionate confession of her feelings. Anemone watches from the shadows, her eyes wide with shock. She clutches her chest, a sudden pang of distress striking her.
Ryuka looks up, surprised to see Anemone walking down the stairs.
She quietly reflects that she gave Ryuka the freedom to do as he wanted. He calls out her name as she walks past him.
Ryuka stands with Anemone amidst a field of white flowers.
He questions her presence, believing she was back at the villa. He grabs her wrist, making a sudden accusation, which she firmly denies. Anemone looks up at him, her expression one of pure innocence.
Realizing his error, Ryuka quickly apologizes, and she does the same.
A quiet, somber moment hangs between them in the aftermath. He then offers her a different ring, asking if she will accept it. Stunned, Anemone covers her mouth with her hand.
Ryuka admits it may be disrespectful to offer her a ring.
As she looks on with a puzzled expression, he worries she doesn't understand its meaning. He kneels before her, presenting the ring as a pledge of lifelong service. With earnest eyes, he holds the ring up to her. Anemone looks down, hand to her chest, unable to speak.
His hopeful gaze remains fixed on her as he awaits her answer.
She stands over the kneeling Ryuka, still at a loss for words. Holding the ring, she softly asks why he would do this for her. She gently places the ring back in his hand.
Ryuka's eyes widen in shock at her refusal.
He looks down as she returns the ring. A look of quiet resolve forms in his eyes. He places a hand over his heart and smiles warmly. Standing together, they share a smile as Anemone decides she'd like to find out with him. The scene changes to a bustling and sunny town marketplace. A voice notes the good girls among a group of collared youths. A merchant thanks a veiled, pink-haired woman for her purchase. A young boy beams with joy amidst a crowd of subdued children. The children are led away by several adults.
The pink-haired woman asks to see more interesting items, and the merchant eagerly agrees.
The merchant leads the way down a side alley to a hidden door. They enter a lavish, gilded hall filled with spectators at an underground event. Nearby, guests place large bets at a gambling table. In a central ring, a lion leaps through a flaming hoop for the crowd. The woman is told this is an arena for monsters and slaves as a beast attacks fighters below. A ferocious purple beast roars, terrifying a group of armed villagers who cry out in fear. The beast viciously slashes through the villagers, splattering blood.
Gah! A wounded villager collapses as the beast's massive foot stomps down, causing others to scream in terror.
A dark-haired man leaps forward, bravely striking the monster with his sword. From the stands, a surprised pink-haired woman in a veiled hat watches the battle unfold. The dark-haired warrior holds his sword, his gaze locked on his monstrous foe. A man in a red cap smiles, telling the pink-haired woman that this spectacle is their most popular item. The lone warrior now faces two of the hulking purple beasts in the fighting pit. In a flash of blades and a spray of blood, the warrior gracefully cuts down both beasts. A crowd of wealthy spectators cheers wildly, waving cash in the air.
The pink-haired woman beams with delight, holding up a dark collar as the man in the red cap explains the fighters are rare remnants of the Blanche tribe.
She asks for the warrior's name as he stands over his defeated comrades, and the man reveals it is Quatre. The man in the red cap smiles, pleased that she likes her new acquisition. But the woman is not yet satisfied, musing that a man's true beauty is revealed in his pained, despairing expression.
Her eyes glow with a chilling, sadistic light as she breaks into a crazed grin. The warrior Katre looks on, his expression stoic and resolute. In a short comic, a man with a dark ponytail complains of being tired from work until a concerned girl pats his head, instantly revitalizing him, though she insists he still needs to rest. The scene shifts to a magnificent castle with towering red spires.
Jean, with his long gray hair tied back, confirms a detail while reviewing documents.
As he works in his office, Anemone learns that the country of Bells is a sanctuary for the wealthy.
He points to a map, explaining it is considered a neutral zone.
Anemone declares her intention to investigate the extent of the slave trade there. She listens intently as Jean reveals the country is ruled by a duke from Anfis, and that he also wishes to investigate slavery.
Overwhelmed by his duties, Jean laments that he'll have to send someone else in his place.
Anemone's eyes harden with resolve as she insists on going herself if Anfis is involved.
Jean smiles, handing her the necessary travel permissions.
A grand sailing ship departs from a bustling port city. Anemone, accompanied by the blonde-haired Ryuka, stands ready for their journey. In the port, Anemone tells Jean and Ryuka that she's going to put her luggage away.
Jean watches her go, his expression betraying his deep worry for her safety.
He turns to Ryuka, admitting that no one is more qualified for the job than Anemone, and Ryuka understands.
Jean senses Anemone's magic on a document Ryuka is holding and asks to see it.
Ryuka looks at him with concern, realizing Jean's earlier worry was not a joke. Jean entrusts Anemone to Ryuka, telling him to support her well on their mission. A close-up shows the gleaming metal on Ryuka's uniform. Their ship sails across the calm sea toward the setting sun. Anemone stands alone on the endless ocean. She reflects that while her prophetic dreams have ceased, the thought of Anfis still makes her sick. Sitting on the deck, she wonders about the nature of a country built on the slave trade. Later that night, the ship cuts through a starry sea. Their ship finally docks at a sunlit harbor. Ryuka helps Anemone onto the pier as they arrive at their destination. A mustached man named Floristan introduces himself as their guide, welcoming the Royal Highness. Anemone offers a gracious, polite smile in return. Walking behind him, Anemone quickly discerns that Floristan is not a guide, but a guard meant to watch them. They enter a beautiful city filled with white architecture, blue domes, and palm trees. From a balcony, Anemone takes in the view of her new surroundings. Looking over the coastal city, she decides their first task is to learn everything they can about this unfamiliar country. Ryuka speaks with Floristan in a sun-drenched courtyard. Their conversation is violently interrupted as armed men charge forward, causing Ryuka to cry out in shock. A blonde young man cries out in shock. Slaves. A group of men stands over a mysterious cloud-like substance. Within a grand estate, the staff panics, wondering about a fire. Alerted by the noise, a blue-haired girl peeks through a doorway. She steps out into the hall, asking what's happening. She worries about Ryuka, who is out scouting, hoping he is safe. Outside, the blonde man draws his sword against two armed men. Eek! He presses his blade to an attacker's neck, demanding to know his purpose. While he fights, a dark-haired man's reflection is seen in a nearby sword. The blonde man glances over his shoulder, suddenly on alert. A hand suddenly grabs the back of his uniform. The mysterious, dark-haired man appears, clashing his blade against the blonde's. The blonde man strains, struggling to block the powerful blow. His new opponent smirks, thinking he's found some work.
The aftermath of the battle leaves bodies strewn across the stone steps.
The blonde man silently takes in the grim scene before him.
Suddenly, the dark-haired swordsman leaps in for another attack.
Their swords lock as they stare each other down. The two engage in a fierce duel across the courtyard. The blonde man receives a cut, realizing how strong his opponent is.
The dark-haired man remains focused and determined during their fight.
They stand off in the courtyard, preparing for their next exchange.
Smoke continues to rise from the besieged estate.
The scene shifts inside to the blue-haired girl's feet.
She looks up with an expression of deep concern.
Intruders corner a guard, demanding to know where she is and threatening him.
Hick! The terrified guard begs for his life.
The blue-haired girl reveals herself, standing before the intruders. She looks on with wide, startled eyes.
As the duel continues outside, an attacker yells, "We've got the girl."
The shout distracts the dark-haired swordsman, whose focus wavers.
He seizes the opportunity to slap his opponent's sword away. The dark-haired man decides it is time to pull back.
"Wait!" the blonde man shouts desperately. The attacker promises they will settle this another time and vanishes.
The scene transitions to a sprawling, impoverished desert town. A closer view shows a prominent white building amidst palm trees.
The blue-haired girl is now a captive, guarded by two women.
She calmly asks one of her captors why she was kidnapped.
The guard, a woman with a tattoo, looks back at her silently. Changing her approach, the girl asks if they have injured people. Her expression is full of empathy and quiet resolve.
She follows a guard through a door and gasps in shock.
She finds a room filled with wounded people, thinking how awful it is. An injured man explains they are just slaves, easily replaced if they die. She reaches out, and a gentle blue light flows from her hand to a slave. Surrounded by an aura of flowers, she asks the wounded not to move. She smiles kindly as her healing magic spreads among the injured. The dark-haired man who fought earlier watches her from the doorway. He tells her not to help them, warning that it will cause jealousy. The blue-haired girl gives a determined look before turning away from the dark-haired man. As she kneels by the wounded, he clenches his fist in frustration. He forcefully grabs her, declaring that she is a hostage. He sternly orders her to stay in her room, but she meets his gaze without fear. In a brief, intense flashback, a man holds a blue-haired girl close. A separate memory shows a weak, pink-haired girl on the floor as a man stands over her, with narration explaining that, as Camille, she was never treated as human. The memory continues, showing the distressed pink-haired girl being tormented by another, recalling she was used as a toy and was always in pain. The scene returns to the wounded slaves as a thought bubble concludes that these people are just like her. "I'll make sure of it," she declares, but the dark-haired man grabs her, telling her to get out of the way. He turns his head, his expression softening slightly in thought. They stand in silence, exchanging a long, searching look. The dark-haired man appears slightly taken aback by her resolve. He looks down, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. The scene transitions back to the large white building in the desert. The blue-haired girl sits calmly at a table, surrounded by greenery. The dark-haired man, sitting opposite her with his arms crossed, introduces himself as Quatre. Quatre, flanked by another man, explains that he is their representative. The blue-haired girl looks at them and calmly asks what they want her to do. Quatre begins his explanation, detailing his people's long history in the region.
He reveals that since the Duchy of Bel was formed, they've been enslaved, which is why they took her, the crown princess, hostage to demand their liberation from both the Duke and the kingdom of Anfis.
A voice from behind her explains their logic. With a visiting crown princess as leverage, their demands will have to be heard.
She gasps in shock, the narration clarifying her true title, First Princess of the Kingdom of Lycol.
Catre whirls on his men, furiously demanding what they mean, as their goal was to kidnap Catalia, the crown princess of Anfis. His men stammer, admitting they thought a princess and a crown princess were the same thing, leaving Catre enraged at their mistake.
He sits stiffly in his chair, seething with anger.
He covers his face, realizing with dread that they not only got the wrong person, but may have just made an enemy of Lycol.
The blue-haired girl internally reflects on the absurdity of being kidnapped by mistake and, of all people, being mistaken for Catalia.
Catre's men panic amongst themselves, realizing they will be executed for kidnapping royalty.
Hearing a noise, the blue-haired girl looks up with a startled expression.
Bang! The door bursts open to reveal the blonde man and his soldiers, swords drawn.
He points his sword forward, threatening to kill everyone unless they talk.
One of the captors lunges, grabbing a hostage and holding a blade to his neck.
The blonde swordsman moves in a blur, swiftly disarming his opponents. A powerful voice rings out, shouting, "Stop it!"
The blue-haired girl stands protectively in front of her captors, shielding them from her brother.
Stunned, he lowers his sword as she pleads with him not to harm them. He cries out in disbelief and frustration that they kidnapped Anemone.
Anemone smiles sweetly, calmly explaining she just accepted an invitation from a friend.
Her brother, her captors, and an older guard all stare in complete shock. She asks her protesting brother to prepare her mansion to host them, leaving him speechless.
The scene changes to a beautiful, sunlit mansion with grand architecture.
A happy family enjoys a bountiful feast, symbolizing the hospitality to come.
Anemone sits formally in a parlor opposite a stern-looking nobleman. The man leans forward, demanding to know what on earth she is thinking.
She replies simply that she doesn't like to see people oppress others.
He gravely warns her that slave trading is the country's dark secret and that it's dangerous to get involved.
Anemone just smiles brightly, surrounded by a vision of white flowers.
Inside the mansion, former slaves now work happily as servants.
One of the new staff members expresses their desire to repay her kindness.
Catre, their leader, sighs and rubs his forehead, completely overwhelmed by the turn of events. A man's voice speaks of being used like livestock for twisted desires. A dark-haired man believes the princess is a genuinely good person. He stands before a young woman with long, light blue hair.
She kindly offers to go clothes shopping with him.
He bluntly refuses, saying he doesn't care about clothes and finds it a hassle. Despite his refusal, she follows him as he walks away.
With a brilliant smile, she insists that he is coming with her.
Annoyed, he thinks to himself that she is quite a stubborn one.
They make their way through a bustling city market. Inside a clothing shop, the blue-haired woman looks around in surprise.
Her eyes sparkle with delight as she whispers, "Wow!"
The dark-haired man looks uncomfortable in a new, elegant blue vest and ruffled shirt.
A detailed view shows an ornate golden chain.
He complains, asking for an outfit that is easier to move in. As a saleswoman smiles, he thinks the outfit is already too casual for his taste.
Their horse-drawn carriage departs from the city.
Inside, the blue-haired woman expresses her wish to have him try on more clothes, but he tells her to give him a break.
He explains firmly that he hates receiving things. She understands, acknowledging that kindness can sometimes feel like a burden. Her insight leaves her momentarily surprised by her own words. The dark-haired man, notes that she has a way with words. He then warns her not to get too involved in his people's affairs. He explains they were enslaved simply because they were foolish.
He vehemently declares he will not yield on this, even if it means bloodshed, reminding her that she is an outsider. A sudden vision shows a dying pink-haired girl, a bouquet of daisies falling near her bloody head. Another vision shows a goddess-like figure with a unicorn, believing she was given power for moments like this. The blue-haired woman declares that helping them all is meaningful to her. The dark-haired man observes her with a serious, unreadable expression. He reflects that she is a strange princess, often kind but sometimes possessing the same determined look as his own people.
The scene shifts to a grand palace under a starry night sky.
Inside a vast library, the blue-haired woman diligently studies at her desk. She reads a book titled History of Duchy of Bells.
Immersed in her research, she takes notes on the history of slavery in the duchy.
A shocked Ryuka finds her still at her desk the next morning, asking if she stayed up all night.
Anemone explains she had much to investigate, focusing on how to expose the duchy's slave system.
Ryuka questions if she really needs to go to such lengths for them. He reminds her that while the slave situation is tragic, these are the same people who kidnapped her.
His anger grows as he recalls how they've harmed innocent people for their own selfish gains. Anemone looks down, stating that she simply cannot accept people oppressing each other. Ryuka argues that their mission was only to observe the country. He presses further, asking what compels her to go so far beyond their original goal. The scene focuses on Anemone at her desk, surrounded by her extensive research.
Anemone looks up with a start, as it's struck by a sudden realization.
Ryuka admits her dedication is admirable, but trails off with concern.
A symbolic image shows Ryuka looking down at a vulnerable anemone surrounded by white flowers. Anemone sits alone, pondering how to properly explain her motivations. Her thoughts are interrupted by a sudden sound, her eyes widening in surprise. A pair of boots steps firmly into the room.
The door opens to reveal the dark-haired man and his companions, who ask the princess what she needs them to do.
The dark-haired man looks on with a steady, determined gaze. As the men leave, Anemone utters a soft, "ah."
Her eyes widen in surprise and a hint of worry.
Later, Anemone and the dark-haired man walk along a garden path, followed by their companions.
He gets her attention by saying, "Hey." He shouts, "Hey!" again, startling her with his intensity.
She turns to him, a nervous sweat drop on her cheek. She realizes this is the first time she and Ryuka have ever fought.
The dark-haired man asks what their fight was about. Anemone admits that Ryuka doesn't want her to do everything alone.
The dark-haired man simply tells her to communicate that to Ryuka.
His direct advice seems to resonate with him as well.
She asks him what he means, but he remains silent. Anemone lowers her gaze, lost in thought.
She huffs, asking where they are even going.
She smiles warmly, her spirits seemingly lifted.
They arrive at a grand, sun-drenched palace.
Inside, they sit down for a meeting as someone calls out for Lady Anemone.
A gray-haired duke responds with a nervous, "Yes."
He asks what she's doing there, while privately wondering why a princess would bring slaves with her. Anemone explains she has a proposal for the duke, as the dark-haired man clarifies that he is her friend. Anemone resolves to try her best, just like her brother.
She addresses the duke from across the table.
The dark-haired man watches her with a serious expression.
She introduces herself as Princess Anemone Lycal Gentiana, representative of an anti-slavery country, here to deliver the people's voices.
The duke looks on, concerned by her declaration. Anemone warns that the Belle's duchy faces severe penalties for violating international treaties and that she cannot predict what their home country, Anfis, will do.
With a sharp glare, she asks if he understands the urgency of the situation. The dark-haired man thinks to himself that he's glad this princess isn't his enemy.
Anemone reflects that it has been a long battle. She states that the more she investigated, the more corruption she found, and now they will move to abolish the slave system as the Duke listens defeated.
She looks on with quiet satisfaction.
Anemone approaches a set of large double doors.
Ryuka peeks out from behind the door. He opens the door for her, standing aside.
They sit across from each other at a small table.
Ryuka bows his head deeply, apologizing for his behavior the other day.
He explains that while she is working on their behalf, he feels he has failed in his role.
He laments that his duty is to support her.
Anemone reflects that you can't know what others are thinking without communication.
She gently places her hand on his cheek.
With a gentle smile, she looks at him. She tells him she can't do anything by herself.
She says with a radiant smile that Ryuka has been her strength, and with him beside her, she can face anything.
Recalling that day, she asks if he can scold her from now on.
She beams with pure, unbridled joy.
Ryuka's eyes widen, his heart skipping a beat.
He looks flustered, caught off guard by her words.
Anemone closes her eyes, resting peacefully on the couch.
Ryuka gently drapes a blanket over her as she sleeps.
A pink-haired woman reflects on her unique perspective.
The gray-haired Duke paces, thinking of the pressure from Lykel's princess.
The pink-haired woman smiles, finding the situation bothersome. A vase of roses symbolizes her desire to break what she cherishes.
Plucking a petal, she muses that beautiful suffering follows her affection.
A tragic vision shows a younger version of herself dying among daisies. She sits thoughtfully, surrounded by the image of withering roses. The scene shifts to a bustling village at sunset. The pink-haired woman appears in disguise, shocked by what she's learned. A red-robed man informs her that Quatre was sold per Princess Anemone's request. The man offers other slaves, but she angrily declares that won't do. She insists she has taken a liking to him and will accept no other. With a sudden idea, she proposes an alternative plan.
She asks to use the arena and buy more slaves, worrying the man.
She smiles wickedly, planning to put on an entertaining show.
The scene transitions to a sprawling coastal city at night. A man stands alone on a balcony, overlooking the moonlit city. It's Quatre, who reflects that the princess has filled his people with hope. The green-vested man approaches, calling his name and asking what's wrong. He learns his people are being forced to fight monsters on the crown princess's order. Quatre's face hardens with resolve as he declares he's going and runs off. He rushes toward a grand, illuminated palace in the distance. Meanwhile, Anemone peacefully enjoys a slice of cake. A smiling Ryuka presents a tray of freshly baked cookies. He serves her a delightful spread of tea and pastries. The negotiations with the duchy were successful, with more talks to come. Anemone and Ryuka share a quiet, successful moment together. Two maids enter the room, calling for Lady Anemone. They offer her a sweet treat from their homeland. Anemone happily takes a bite as everyone smiles warmly. The green-vested man bursts in, pleading for help as Quatre and others were taken to the arena.
In a vast coliseum, Quatre stands alone against a massive black dragon. He stands defiant, bloodied, but clutching his sword tightly.
The massive dragon lets out a terrifying, deafening roar. From the stands, the pink-haired woman watches with a smirk, sipping champagne. The lone warrior faces the monstrous beast as the crowd looks on.
He charges forward as the dragon lunges to meet him.
The dragon's fierce, slitted eye glares down with murderous intent.
A massive claw slams into the ground, narrowly missing him.
Catre screams in agony, lying wounded on the blood-soaked ground. The red-robed man explains to the pink-haired woman that the monster is impervious to normal attacks. She smiles cruelly, wanting to see more of Catre's suffering. Anemone and Ryuka race down a stone corridor.
Stopped by guards, Anemone angrily dismisses the need for an invitation.
Declaring she'll let herself in, she unleashes her power, shattering the massive doors.
Catre kneels defeated in the arena, a faint light glowing around him.
He closes his eyes, accepting that this could be the end.
He collapses to the ground, his strength finally giving out.
The dragon looms over his fallen body, ready for the final blow.
In his final moments, Catre's thoughts turn to Anemone.
A wave of blue light slams into the massive dragon.
On the ground, the bloodied Catre groans in pain.
Anemone appears, her glowing hair flowing as she shields Catre from the beast. Her expression is one of cold, unwavering resolve. The spectating crowd gasps and murmurs at the sudden turn of events.
Ryuka rushes to Catre's side, helping the wounded man sit up.
Anemone's eyes widen in horror, realizing this is an arena for death matches.
Recalling the pink-haired woman's cruelty, she seethes at the thought of toying with human lives. Anemone unleashes her immense power, a torrent of blue energy swirling around her.
The dragon lunges, its cavernous maw wide open to devour her. Undaunted, she raises her hands, preparing to meet its attack head-on. Her power intensifies, the ribbon on her dress glowing with magic. The dragon recoils as her power engulfs it in a blinding light. The formerly jeering crowd now cheers in awe and excitement.
Anemone vows this will never happen again as her magic shatters the arena floor.
The entire Colosseum begins to crumble, sending nobles fleeing for their lives. The crowd screams in panic as the stands collapse around them. The pink-haired woman, Lady Catalia, stares in disbelief at the absurd magic power as her guard urges her to escape.
Psk. She clicks her tongue, infuriated that someone would get so angry for others as her attendant pulls her away.
Lady Catalia and her retinue flee as rubble rains down from the collapsing structure.
In the ruined arena, the dragon lies defeated while Ryuka tends to Catre.
Anemone looks over the destruction, a worried expression on her face.
As Ryuka asks what to do, Anemone decides they'll have to find a way to fix it and create a good excuse.
A bright memory of Catre's joyful, carefree smile flashes through her mind.
Anemone turns, her gaze soft and thoughtful.
Catre smiles back warmly in her memory.
The scene shifts to a grand, sun-drenched palace.
The gray-haired Duke pens a letter, his face etched with worry.
The Duke sits across from Anemone and the former slaves for a formal meeting.
An official announces that negotiations between the Duchy of Bells and the indigenous people have concluded.
Anemone smiles, realizing the Duke now lacks the power to refuse their demands.
Catre gently comforts a bandaged and crying companion.
The scene transitions to a different palace with striking blue domes. Anemone sits alone, facing away in a quiet room.
A man with long gray hair looks visibly stressed.
Anemone understands the duchy's emancipation has panicked other nations, who will now support the indigenous people to protect their own secrets.
The gray-haired man sighs, admitting he's busy as well. He calls out to a somber Anemone.
He reassures her that what she did was wonderful, regardless of others' opinions.
Anemone looks up, her eyes wide with surprise. He calls her his pride and his little sister, and she tearfully thinks, "Big brother."
Her brother gives her a gentle, reassuring smile.
Anemone beams with pure happiness. Back in the duchy, Anemone faces Ryuka and a line of guards. She reflects that the issue of slavery has been partially resolved. Now she must face her own issues, as Ryuka reports he has information on Crown Princess Catalia's movements. Anemone's expression hardens as she prepares for the next confrontation. A regal carriage travels along a path surrounded by lush greenery. Inside, Lady Catalia travels to a bustling town square. From her carriage, she observes a group of children playing happily together. A pink-haired woman decides to leave, feeling bored and wary of trouble. The scene transitions to a ship docked in a bright, sunny harbor. She observes a somber group of people, including a small child, on the docks. A man confirms to her that these are all the slaves he has purchased. Two of her men urge her to hurry, blaming the princess from Lycole for potential trouble. She reflects on Anemone, thinking her a mysterious person. She admits to feeling frustrated by her. But as she thinks of Anemone, she wonders about this new, unfamiliar feeling. She turns her head, her gaze drawn to something in the distance. From afar, she sees Anemone standing with her brother and a group of people. The view focuses on the calm expression of the blue-haired girl. The two young women now stand facing one another on the docks. Anemone looks forward with a determined gaze. The pink-haired woman greets her curtly and asks her to step aside. Anemone refuses, declaring she cannot let the people behind her pass. A nobleman announces a new law. The indigenous people of Anfis cannot be enslaved. The pink-haired woman reacts in disbelief, asking if he is joking. She stands before the slaves, angrily asserting her right to them as property she purchased. Anemone calmly informs her that those people are no longer slaves. The nobleman, standing beside the blonde man, confirms that Anemone is correct. Several figures of authority stand behind the nobleman's decree. The men who purchased the slaves look on from the side. The pink-haired woman snaps, ordering everyone to stop. She turns to her men, thinking how unpleasant the situation has become. The two women stand in a silent standoff on the pier. The pink-haired woman concedes defeat, lamenting that nothing ever goes her way when Anemone is involved. Anemone calmly replies that it's because Lady Catalia is doing something wrong. The newly freed people are gathered safely with Anemone's companions. Catalia glares, conceding that Anemone may be right. She defiantly tells Anemone that she refuses to live by her principles. Anemone places a hand on her shoulder, stating Catalia's path is so dark it would kill a normal person. With a cool smile, Catalia tells her to take care of herself before departing. Anemone watches her rival go, a sense of quiet victory in the air. Catalia and her entourage board their ship to leave the port. Anemone stands on the dock, watching the ship prepare to depart. She feels relieved, glad she was able to stop Catalia's plans. 3 of the freed women smile, expressing their gratitude. Anemone thanks the nobleman, who admits she has surprised him in many ways. He smiles warmly, clearly impressed by her actions.
Anemone beams, happily accepting his praise.
She and the freed people wave as the nobleman's party departs. Anemone is suddenly taken aback, realizing that Catre never came to see her.
The scene shifts to inside a grand hall, where Catre stands waiting. With his arms crossed, he quietly asks himself why she did it. He declares that he owes her a debt for life that he must repay. Sir, he strides forward, calling out to Lady Anemone.
He kneels before her, presenting his sheathed sword in a pledge of service.
Anemone's brother supports her decision, while Quatre renounces his loyalty to his own country. She touches his blade, formally acknowledging him as her knight.
Overcome with emotion, Quatre places a hand over his heart in silent gratitude.
They complete the knighting ceremony together. Quatre smiles, feeling a little embarrassed.
Anemone beams, her collar sparkling brightly. Her brother clears his throat loudly. He sternly tells Quatre to treat Anemone with proper respect now. Anemone watches as the two men stare each other down. Pleased, Anemone sails away on a grand ship under a golden sunset.
The scene shifts to a magnificent red and white castle.
Boom! An explosion rocks a city street, sending citizens fleeing in terror. A man with dark blue hair prepares to draw his weapon.
Quatre swiftly strikes down a masked thief.
He falls to the ground, surprised by the thief's reaction of pain.
A voice notes that while his skills are top-notch, he's a bit too rough.
A man in a blue uniform scolds Quatre over the defeated foe. Anemone smiles, simply glad that everyone is getting along. She and Quatre sit together, studying at a large table. Her blonde brother enters carrying a large stack of books.
He and his sister smile happily while working together. Quatre asserts that he can handle the work, looking pointedly at Anemone.
He eagerly asks what's next, telling her to let him do it.
Anemone agrees, asking him to wait a moment. The blonde man smiles as he watches his sister from the library stacks. He places the books down, getting Quatre's disapproving attention. The blonde man introduces himself as Quatre's senior knight. Quatre smirks, pointedly asking if he is jealous. Anemone turns and asks what the two of them are talking about. They both reply in unison, nothing at all, leaving her completely baffled.
Before a royal court, Anemone considers the impact of the slave liberation.
She notes that other countries are now trying to abolish the system. Her thoughts turn grim, identifying Anfis as the problem since it shows no sign of change.
A narration explains that friction with neighboring countries will likely arise from Anfis's tough attitude.
Nobles gossip that Anfis is surprisingly calm, having started diplomatic relations with other countries, which they find unsettling. A man with long, gray-blue hair resolves to remain vigilant. He can't imagine Catalia will remain idle through this. Anemone agrees, certain that her rival must be scheming something. A man on a throne proposes they discuss the awaited Holy Spirit festival. The assembled nobles turn their attention to Anemone. The man on the throne explains that the priests have made a request. Anemone's eyes widen in surprise. Wah! The crowd of nobles murmurs excitedly. The nobles smile, agreeing that Lady Anemone is the perfect choice. The man with gray-blue hair also voices his support, believing Anemone is perfect. Anemone gasps, stunned by the sudden turn of events. A nobleman insists that if it's too much for her, no one else would be suitable. Anemone realizes everyone has high expectations of her, which once felt burdensome. With new resolve, she places a hand on her chest and accepts the role. The man on the throne smiles warmly, thanking Anemone for her acceptance. He stands before the court as they applaud his decision. Anemone watches the proceedings with a serious expression. The scene transitions to a quiet room where gentle music flows from a piano. The blue-haired girl looks up in surprise. She stands silently before her music teacher at the piano. Her teacher delivers a blunt assessment of her singing. The teacher flatly declares that she is tone-deaf. With a dejected look, the blue-haired girl thinks, "I knew it." She recalls two gray-haired men praising her unique voice as a child. In the memory, she first begins to wonder if she is tone-deaf. Back in the present, her teacher notes the song is simple. But she clarifies that success depends entirely on Her Highness's efforts.
The blue-haired girl vows to do her absolute best. She begins her rigorous vocal training beside the grand piano. Her days are filled with endless lessons and fittings.
In a memory, she runs happily toward a gray-haired man.
He places a comforting hand on her shoulder.
The gray-haired man asks if she needs to take a break.
She smiles brightly, saying she wants to complete her task.
He decides it is best not to interfere. The two share a moment of joyful laughter. Hearing a man call for the princess, she happily responds. The gray-haired man smiles, already impressed by her diligence. He departs, holding a folder of documents. The scene shifts to a blonde man and a gray-haired man in a lavish parlor. The gray-haired man apologizes for the sudden summons. The blonde man carefully reviews the documents presented to him. After a moment of silence, the gray-haired man calls it a generous offer. The blonde man acknowledges his hard work for their family.
He offers a faint, appreciative smile.
The gray-haired man proposes an engagement with the House of Duke Acacia, offering his full support. The blonde man's expression grows serious as he considers the proposal. He closes his eyes, asking for time to think. The gray-haired man agrees, expecting a positive answer. The blonde man stands alone outside the ornate, closed doors.
A fond memory of his family surfaces.
He knows the marriage proposal to the Sentiana family is too advantageous to refuse.
He accepts that both he and Lady Anemone must eventually marry.
Despite his duty, his heart longs to be a knight. He wishes he could remain by her side. He stands resolute on the palace floor.
The scene shifts to a grand, sunlit castle.
Anemone, the blue-haired girl, stands thoughtfully by her window.
The blonde man enters her room, calling out to Lady Anemone.
He approaches her carrying a fine tea set. She thanks him as he serves her tea and a snack. She notes that he seems even more attentive than usual today. He waits patiently by her side as she eats dessert. He smiles gently, offering his help with anything she might need.
A comfortable silence settles between them as they enjoy their tea.
The two share a quiet afternoon together in the sunlit room. Anemone thinks to herself that she feels safe with Ryuka.
She smiles peacefully, enjoying her cup of tea.
Ryuka calmly sips his tea. Anemone gasps, realizing his words sounded like a proposal. They face each other in a moment of shy, awkward silence. Her eyes widen in stunned surprise. His eyes also widen, a faint blush on his cheeks. Anemone admits to herself that her heart races when she looks at Ryuka.
The two stand opposite each other, a spark between them.
She wonders when she started to feel this way. He gently takes her hand across the small table. Anemone begins to confess how she feels about their time together. A gray-haired nobleman on a throne thinks Lady Anemone is a princess worthy of his devotion. Anemone listens with a thoughtful expression.
Ryuka looks down, his expression filled with sadness.
He musters a gentle smile. Anemone looks up in sudden shock. She smiles warmly, declaring that he is her knight. They share a pleasant moment over tea. Ryuka sits quietly listening to her. He walks alone across a bridge toward a distant castle. He believes he is not a suitable partner for Lady Anemone. He resolves not to confess his feelings. Sword in hand, he walks with firm resolve. He continues to doubt his own worth. He clenches his fist, convinced he cannot win the heart of someone so loved. Looking toward the castle, he vows to hide his feelings away. He admits to himself that he has fallen deeply for her. Ryuka stands firm, his duty clear in his mind. The scene shifts to a large estate as music drifts from the windows. Inside, Anemone is lost in song. She sings with pure passion, her eyes closed.
In a grand hall, Anemone has a singing lesson accompanied by a pianist.
She falters mid-song, looking flustered.
Her teacher gives her a disapproving glance.
The teacher decides to end the lesson for the day. Anemone sighs, frustrated that she can't concentrate.
Looking out the window, she spots something and wonders if it's a cuddle.
A white dove lands near Quatre, who greets the cuddle.
Anemone finds Quatre sitting peacefully on a balcony below, and he greets the princess.
She approaches and asks him what he's doing here.
He explains he is setting up a perimeter guard with the doves, which Anemone finds amazing. She reflects on her own childhood raising animals. Anemone asks if he ever had an animal partner, and Quatre confirms he did. He fondly remembers his black panther, Linella, but fears she is gone after their homeland was attacked.
Anemone looks down sadly and offers an apology.
Quatre smiles, saying life is fine but a bit cramped, and stands up. He cheerfully invites her to take a break with him. Anemone looks up at his offer, her eyes wide with surprise. He helps her onto his horse, and they ride off together through the woods. Quatre grins, asking if she wants to go faster, and she enthusiastically agrees. They gallop freely, sharing a moment of pure joy.
Resting by a stream, Anemone admits she thought she was going to die, while Quatre smiles and asks if he scared her.
She beams, saying no, and that she actually had a lot of fun. Thanking Quatre, she says with a bright smile that she feels much better now. He looks at her warmly, glad to hear that.
The scene shifts to a magnificent, sunlit castle with red-topped spires. An internal voice resolves not to dwell on the past.
Anemone looks out her window, deciding to focus on the tasks before her. She works diligently, telling her piano teacher she's looking forward to their lessons, and later reviewing a large map with her advisors.
While Anemone is singing, a young blonde man calls her name, suggesting they take a break for tea.
As he opens the window to air out the room, Anemone gratefully accepts his offer.
The blonde man looks on with a serious, determined expression.
The scene transitions to a different grand palace nestled in a lush forest.
Inside a great hall, Lady Catalia presides over an assembly with a nobleman. The council erupts in debate over abolishing slavery and the princess's visit, until a man in red robes slams his fist down, shouting for silence. The blonde man from the assembly angrily declares it's someone's job to clean up the mess. He argues before the assembly that slavery cannot be abolished because slaves are a valuable part of the nation's workforce. Lady Catalia listens to the proceedings with a cold, impassive expression. In her chambers, she is pampered by 3 maids attending to her hands and feet. She muses that people want to rule others, just as an attendant announces her arrival. A mustachioed nobleman in a dark cloak greets her with a cheerful wave. He explains to Lady Catalia that he is struggling to manage his family's territory and asks for the crown prince's assistance.
Catalia reflects that while her position has brought influence, it has also created many enemies, and notes her father is getting old.
The nobleman reveals that the dukedom's power is failing and its lands are falling into poverty as Catalia listens intently. Hearing this news, Lady Catalia breaks into a joyful, triumphant laugh. The nobleman takes her hand, calling her all he has, and she replies that he is the only one. Her demeanor instantly shifts to cold command as she looks at his hand and orders, "Wash it up."
Feeling bored, she decides it's time to come up with a fresh idea for some fun.
Laughing while washing her hands, she again thinks about her boredom and her need for new amusement. In a memory, a blonde man embraces her in bed, telling her he loves her and needs nothing else.
She believes she has everything, as the scene shifts to a woman resembling her, placing flowers on a grave in a cemetery.
A flashback reveals a younger Catalia maliciously dumping a bucket of water on two unsuspecting maids. In another memory, her older sister advises a young Catalia that she mustn't play such games with others.
Young Catalia watches as her father and sister walk away together down a path.
Remembering her father's feigned shock at her sister's death, she reveals she knew it was a lie from the start. She recalls the bloody sight of her murdered sister, stating their father killed her to make Catalia the crown princess.
With a chilling smile, she thinks her sister died because she was chosen, not her, as she stands before the grave. At the grave, she ponders dying unloved, and then feels a sudden, intense desire to see someone. She compares Anemone to her sister, finding the resemblance unpleasant, yet fun, and declares Anemone her new favorite. The scene returns to the grand castle with the red-roofed spires.
Anemone bustles along an outdoor corridor, her arms full of books and scrolls. She peeks into a study where her gray-haired brother is busy with his advisors. He notices her and asks her with a warm smile to wait a moment.
She sits across from him at his large marble desk, ready to talk.
Later, in a beautiful garden pavilion, he asks how her chanting is going, and she confirms it's going well.
He gently observes that she's quick to handle things herself, encouraging her to rely on him more. Anemone looks up at him, her expression thoughtful and receptive. He tenderly rests his head against hers in a quiet moment of sibling affection.
Patting her head, he praises her for doing great and tells her it's okay to take a break.
Anemone closes her eyes and smiles, finding his affection both embarrassing and calming. She gazes up at him, softly addressing him as brother.
Anemone asks the gray blue-haired man if he wants to hear her practice.
She sings beautifully, surrounded by ethereal music. He listens intently, thinking her voice is beautiful. As she smiles, he reflects on how quickly she has grown up. He fondly remembers singing lullabies to her when she was just a baby. Filled with emotion, she tells him she loves him. The scene changes to a man and woman sitting formally in a sunlit room.
Anemone appears in a stunning new gown, asking for their opinion as they stare in awe.
Her mother calls the dress very nice, and the man agrees, calling her Anemone.
Anemone beams, pleased that she had the gown custom-made.
The man looks thoughtful, a question lingering on his lips. She turns to him, noticing his contemplative silence. He presents a formal document, telling Anemone he has something for her. Holding the document, she stares in shock as he reveals it's a marriage proposal.
She considers the political advantage of forging connections with other nations.
She admits to herself that it's difficult to contemplate marriage right now. He promises to wait until she is ready, though he finds the situation unfortunate. He reminds the woman, Your Majesty, that she always wanted to stop these foreign proposals.
He stands and cheerfully departs the room.
Anemone looks to her mother, her expression serious. She asks her mother how she is supposed to choose the right man to marry. Her mother recalls that there was a lot going on in the past. She explains that some people once accused her of trying to take over the duchy. She advises Anemone to value her own feelings, promising to support her. Anemone looks down, contemplating her mother's heartfelt advice. Mother and daughter share a warm, understanding smile. Later, Anemone works diligently at her desk. She reflects on all the people she has met and the experiences she's had. Surrounded by visions of her loved ones, she resolves to live a life without regrets. A close-up shows the gleaming metal on her brother's uniform. Her blonde brother compares himself to another, but Anemone assures him he is special.
A simple yellow dress stands in contrast to her formal attire.
Anemone looks up in wide-eyed surprise. The scene shifts to the pink-haired woman, Catalia, holding a letter. The blonde man's hand pens a simple thank you note.
Catalia stares at the invitation in her hand. She angrily crumples the letter, questioning the invitation after their long rivalry.
A devious smile spreads across her face as she decides to accept the plan. She turns to a maid, asking for a pen and paper.
The story transitions to a vibrant, sun-drenched port city. A confident step announces a new arrival on the docks.
An ornate brooch gleams on a traveler's fine white cape.
A man with white hair surveys the port, remarking that this is Lycol.
He stands before the royal family in a grand throne room. He introduces himself as Kureha Luna Ilna Irunar, honored by the invitation. The gray, blue-haired man offers to be Kureha's guide.
Kureha smiles brightly, flattered by the welcome.
Anemone gasps in utter shock, pointing toward her neck.
As they tour the city, Kureha praises Lycoilus's impressive architecture and magic, thanking Anemone for the tour and wishing his own architects could see it.
He lets out a hearty, joyful laugh.
A narration introduces the country of Irunar, where a polygamous king's many children fight for the throne, and the cheerful Kureha has become crown prince. Anemone looks on with a thoughtful expression. While they walk, Kureha notes that he's heard she is learning magic. He smiles warmly at her. He enthusiastically praises her, calling her both pretty and strong.
Anemone is left blushing and speechless by his bold compliments.
Kureha turns and asks where she will take them next. A brown-haired man apologizes to Anemone's companions for King Kureha being a bit much.
Anemone and Kureha admire a grand bridge, which he finds impressive.
At a market, he curiously asks about a yellow fruit as she tries one.
He happily takes a bite, proving to be a curious and friendly man.
She offers to show him the Ministry of Magic, and he eagerly requests to see the town square too. Kureha asks if she will be his guide after the festival, and she agrees, making him very happy.
Suddenly, a dark, menacing aura erupts around Calitre and Anemone's brother. Catre draws his sword as the shadows intensify.
He recognizes the familiar magic as belonging to Irunar.
Kureha's guard warns that a half-brother is trying to kill him, but he stands his ground as a shadow beast emerges.
Kureha's expression hardens with determination. Anemone raises her hand, stepping forward to intervene.
She calmly assesses the unfolding danger. Her hand glowing with light, Anemone prepares a spell as Kureha watches in shock.
A brilliant light flares from her body. She swiftly pulls Kureha out of the path of a shadowy attack.
Turning to him, she asks with concern if he is hurt. He stares at her, his expression serious and unreadable.
A warm smile spreads across his face as he thinks she is both brave and lovely.
Catre and the blonde brother stare in disbelief. Kureha's mouth falls open in shock. He clasps his hands together with heartfelt emotion.
Anemone looks back, her expression one of complete surprise.
She stares in wide-eyed shock at what is happening.
The ornate brooch on Kureha's collar gleams brightly.
"What?"
exclaims Anemone's brother, as he and Catre look on in astonishment.
Kureha's attendants tried to restrain him as he speaks with Anemone.
He leans in close, gazing intently at a flustered Anemone. Anemone hides behind her brother, peeking out at Kureha.
Kureha watches her with a soft, thoughtful gaze.
His companions apologize profusely, announcing they will leave for the day.
Beaming with joy, Kureha is oblivious to his flustered guards. His men finally manage to drag the protesting prince away.
Anemone reflects on his direct proposal, thinking he is like a storm.
Her blonde brother gazes down at her with a gentle smile.
Catre announces that first they have a mess to deal with. The three of them look at the massive crater left by the attack.
The scene shifts to the city, bustling with preparations for the Holy Spirit Festival.
Catalia arrives, standing before Anemone and the gray-blue-haired man in the throne room.
Anemone formally welcomes her rival to Lycol.
Catalia smiles graciously and thanks her.
The gray-blue-haired man declares that he will be Catalia's guide.
A gilded carriage makes its way through the festive city streets. An ornate royal carriage rumbles through a bustling town street.
Inside, Catalia tells Prince Jean that she is surprised. She smiles, admitting she didn't expect the crown prince to escort her.
Catalia laments not being able to speak with Anemone, but Jean explains Anemone is busy preparing for the gala.
Looking out at the festive city, Jean mentions he heard Anemone will be playing the part of Saint Lycol.
Catalia expresses her excitement, and Jean quietly agrees.
He turns his head slightly, formally addressing someone as Your Majesty.
Catalia looks up in surprise as Jean asks if he can question her. The two sit side by side in a tense silence. Prince Jean's expression is serious and unreadable.
Catalia maintains her composure, her gaze steady and wary. Jean explains that a matter involving Lycol is now a state-to-state issue being investigated by Anfis, placing it outside his personal jurisdiction.
He offers to listen if she has something to discuss, making her wonder if he's baiting a confession.
Jean clarifies he isn't seeking a confession, but will remember the past, as he has more important duties now.
Intrigued, Catalia asks him what he means.
Prince Jean simply offers her a confident, knowing smile.
The jeweled cross on his collar gleams brightly.
Catalia inwardly questions how he can remain so calm, reminding herself that she is his sister's guest, despite almost killing him.
He gazes at her, thinking she looks dazzling and confident, and wonders if anyone has ever loved him so intensely.
As the carriage clatters to a halt, Prince Jean announces that they have arrived.
In an intimate moment, Catalia moves close to Jean, her hand reaching for him.
A look of shock crosses Jean's face as he recognizes the approaching magic of the Oxalis family. She shoves him down, revealing her magic can fool people even if it's not a true caller, and calls him Prince Jean.
With a sinister smile, she wonders aloud what he would do if she took his precious brother from him. A promotional image shows a black-haired man and a brown-haired girl. A website notice displays various manhwa covers.
Threatening to take his brother, Catalia leans in and commands him to listen. Prince Jean suddenly grabs her wrist, causing her to gasp. Eh? He sits up, holding her arm firmly as she glares down at him.
With a steady gaze, he informs her that her magic doesn't work on him.
A close-up reveals two gleaming magical charms on his uniform, which she recognizes with alarm.
Catalia's eyes widen in utter shock and disbelief. He explains the charms negate control magic and that more will be made. As he grips her wrist, she asks him to let go, telling him he's hurting her. Prince Jean looks startled, seemingly surprised by his own actions.
Catalia calls him adorable for needing a magic countermeasure, then menacingly asks if he knew there were many ways to manipulate people. Stunned, he listens as she claims that one can only love another by hurting them.
She watches his reaction, asking him if that isn't a pity.
He agrees, sadly concluding that her life must be so lonely.
Her expression hardens into a cold, angry glare.
A coachman announces their arrival as the carriage stops before a grand building. Jean helps Catalia from the carriage, remarking that she's no fun.
As they walk, he thinks to himself that he can't believe both she and her sister are trying to see through him.
They arrive at a magnificent cathedral,
fronted by a large, star-shaped fountain.
Jean bids Catalia farewell for now.
The scene shows happy families enjoying the day.
In another location, a woman with long, light blue hair is attended by several maids in a lavish room.
Clutching a pendant, her heart pounds with nervous anticipation.
The blue-haired woman shakily affirms her readiness. As she walks down a bright corridor, a dark-haired man advises her to relax and have fun to ensure victory.
Anemone offers a sincere thank you. A vast crowd gathers in the sunlit castle square.
An orchestra stands ready to perform.
Anemone peeks nervously from behind a stone pillar. The blonde man smiles warmly, addressing Lady Anemone. He and Anemone stand facing each other among white flowers. She closes her eyes, taking a calming breath. They stand together on the grand tiled courtyard floor. Anemone tells him she has calmed down, and he acknowledges her recent struggles. A wreath of yellow flowers magically blooms on his chest. Beautiful light blue roses blossom around Anemone in response. She beams, promising to do her best and asking him to watch over her. He agrees with a gentle smile and a wave. Overcome with joy, Anemone lets out a happy laugh. The scene transitions, focusing on the white roses at her feet. Elsewhere, Kureha and his attendant stand on a high balcony. Kureha reviews a report, summarizing what he could gather from it. He declares that he needs to feel the essence more.
His attendant questions his plan to welcome Princess Anemone, but Kureha simply finds the situation amusing.
The attendant worries, thinking this will be a headache if Kureha is serious.
Kureha cheerfully suggests they get friendly with Crown Princess Catalia instead.
He sips his drink with a cunning, satisfied smirk.
The scene transitions to a new day. Anemone stands alone before the orchestra as the crowd applauds. She stands tall, composed, and ready.
The cellists begin to play their instruments.
Anemone addresses the crowd, expressing her pride in working with everyone. She stands before the large assembly, preparing to sing. Taking a final breath, she places a hand over her heart. Her voice rings out, filled with powerful emotion. She sings gracefully, her long blue hair flowing. A flashback begins as a young, pink-haired Catalia proudly tells her father she has learned new magic. The magic violently backfires, striking another young girl who cries out in pain. Catalia feigns an apology, claiming her hand slipped. Young Catalia thinks with a cruel smile that the other girl could have used her own magic to escape. A narrator recalls how the sleep of death was once her only solace, as a vision of a young woman floats amid shattered glass. The memory shifts to a joyous portrait of Anemone's family. Back in the present, Anemone sings with heartfelt passion. She continues her performance with a gentle, confident smile. She sings of meeting many people, recalling a tense tea with Catalia. She remembers a frighteningly close moment with a dark-haired man. A memory of her blonde brother's pained expression flashes by. She recalls a silent, tense confrontation with Catalia. She remembers a somber room filled with injured people. Filled with a powerful resolve, she sings of her desire to live. Her face shines with a radiant, joyful smile. She opens her arms, reaching out to the audience through her song. Suddenly, the lights go out, plunging the crowd into confusion. A divine light surrounds Anemone as a magnificent white horse materializes behind her. The entire audience stares in stunned, silent awe. Anemone gazes calmly at the ethereal creature before her. Anemone stares in wide-eyed wonder. She peacefully embraces the divine horse. The magical beast stands beside her. Her song fills the air with magic. She greets the world with open arms. A woman tells a crying baby to be quiet. A gray-haired man in a wheelchair watches intently. He suddenly stands, asking what's happening.
A white-haired man thinks they summoned a holy beast.
Onlookers murmur that it's a miracle only Saint Lycal could perform.
The white-haired man smirks, realizing a true saint has appeared and finding the situation interesting.
The holy beast floats majestically behind Anemone. She descends gracefully with the creature. The entire crowd is struck into silent awe. A single clap breaks the silence as the crowd erupts.
The audience gazes up at her in utter amazement.
They cry out, calling her a holy saint.
Feeling faint, Anemone begins to stumble.
The blonde man rushes to support her. He holds her securely in his arms. From a distance, Catalia watches them. Her expression is calm and unreadable. Tears well up in her eyes. A memory shows a young Catalia watching another girl. She recalls the girl couldn't sing well because she lacked proper lessons.
Overcome with emotion, Catalia clasps her hands.
A single tear falls from her eye. Anemone stands between two men welcoming the assembly. She introduces her dark-haired knight, Quatre. She asks to learn about Lycal and bells. Anemone asks the people to share their stories. She stands before them with a hopeful smile. The white-haired man sees this as a warning to Anfis. An attendant asks if Anfis will protest, but Catalia calmly replies, "Not now." Catalia wonders if she could have touched people's hearts like Anemone did. With quiet resolve, she decides to leave. Anemone mingles with guests after her performance. Catalia arrives at the reception, thanking Anemone for the invitation. She apologizes for her late arrival and takes Anemone's hand. The two princesses stand hand in hand. Catalia praises Anemone's beautiful country. She describes the people as bright and warm. Anemone is visibly moved by her words.
Catalia's demeanor chills as she admits Anemone's brightness makes her uncomfortable.
They face each other in the sunny courtyard. Catalia looks down with a faint smile. Anemone watches her with a look of concern. The scene shifts to a bustling port city. The white-haired man welcomes Anemone to the port. He presents her with a wax-sealed letter. Anemone smiles brightly, promising to write to him. A white-haired man holds her hands, calling her cute and proposing marriage. As they arrive in the city, the cloaked man addresses Prince Jean. Catalia smiles, remarking that Anemone is like a sister to her. Jean looks back, surprised by her comment. He stands with a serious, contemplative expression. Gazing at the ship, he wonders which of them will survive the coming conflict. Catalia bids Prince Jean farewell, thanking him for the tour. He stands alone on the empty pier, watching her depart. The grand ship sails away across a golden sea. As Anemone watches from her window, a narrator notes that every country has its own agenda. Under the full moon, it's stated everyone is waiting for the show to begin. With a determined gaze, Anemone reaches forward into an uncertain future.